Join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Home Secretary urges police to arrest fuel protesters as they bring motorways to a standstill.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. It is 6 o'clock this morning on Tuesday, the 5th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
What I'd like to know from you today, those fuel protesters, they're not eco-warriors, right? These are people who are saying they're protesting about the price of fuel on your behalf. Do they represent you? Are they a hero for you doing what you wouldn't do? Or are they a complete inconvenience? Do let us know, because this is what's leading the news on this Tuesday morning.
Absolutely, because Priti Patel has urged the police to arrest and charge fuel campaigners that are blocking motorways amid warnings that the protests could continue throughout the summer.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is facing a party revolt over Brexit after he vowed in a speech not to take Britain back into the single market. It comes as he prepares to learn if he will be fined over Beergate.
Police in Chicago have arrested a 22-year-old man who opened fire from a rooftop during a 4th of July parade. The incident killed 6 and injured 30 others.
And 1 person has died and 3 others have been taken to hospital after a major gas explosion at a block of flats yesterday in Bedford. Police say further bodies could be found in the coming days as they search the rubble.
So, as always, get involved in the conversation. Let us know your thoughts about anything we discuss this morning. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can use Twitter @gbnews.
OK, we're also, remember, on the lookout for the People's Champion. We're going to bring this to conclusion. We're going to let you, well, we're going to start it. We say bring it to conclusion. We'll announce our first People's Champion, and hopefully that'll be the first of many. So someone special we're looking for, someone who goes above and beyond the call of duty, someone who does something for their community, someone that does something that the rest of us wouldn't do. So
something positive. We just need to bring something positive into the news, don't we, sometimes?
We do.
We do. So email us with the subject title, Breakfast People's Champion, and we'll be celebrating you.
Top story is the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has urged police to use new powers to arrest and charge fuel campaigners who brought motorways to a standstill yesterday. This was a protest about the record price of fuel.
Well, campaigners are now warning that protests could continue for months, adding to the so-called summer of discontent.
Well, let's get the views now of political commentator Eamonn on all of this. Petrol protests, are they benefiting us? Are these people representing us? Are they just a pain in the butt?
You see, this is the thing, Eamonn, and as you were saying before, these protesters are protesting against the price of fuel. Now, what is a big constituent of the price of fuel? Taxation. I think it could be as high as 50% of the cost that we're paying for our fuel is tax taken by the government. So actually, if the government wanted to do something other than locking up protesters protesting against the price of fuel, they could actually cut things like VAT, which is actually something which, surprise, surprise, the Labour Party is calling for. I would suggest that perhaps the best way a Conservative government can change the situation is not to lock up people that want to pay less tax, but perhaps implement some tax cuts.
Although there will be people who say, you know, what Priti Patel's suggesting is a good idea, because you look at the pictures of the M4 in Somerset yesterday, and on one side of the motorway, people were playing football. I mean, it's impossible to go about your business if you're in that part of town. People needing to go to hospital appointments, people needing to go to exams, whatever it might be. Hugely disruptive and terrible for the economy.
Precisely, and the police have been given a lot of powers to deal with these protesters, but just one wonders how sustainable these kinds of authoritarian actions are. I mean, where do they end? There are actually a lot of Conservatives who are quite uncomfortable with this policing bill that went through. And I think the reason for these protests happening, it's very different to the eco-protests. This is people protesting because they do not believe the government is doing enough to solve the cost of living.
So you think, Albie, really, the Home Secretary would be better served inviting a few of them into Downing Street and sitting down with a cup of tea and saying, look, here's our plans, we feel your pain, this is what we would like to do. Because I predict now there will be a VAT cut in fuel, and it will happen when it suits the government to get them the best sort of headlines, some sort of autumn statement or whatever. But surely, I mean, the price where we are now, you know, what's it up to £2 now, isn't
easily,
it? For fuel. Something has got to be done. Why, as a government, would you be seen dragging and kicking, fighting and kicking against all of this when you could actually be on the side of people?
Yes, I mean, it seems obvious that they could be on the side of people, but one of the things that we've also got to remember is everyone likes it when the government spends money. And fuel taxes bring in about £30 billion of revenue each year. And so if we're going to be cutting taxes, the other argument is, well, where are we going to get that money to spend on the public services that everyone wants the government to spend money on? So the government's in a tricky position on this.
It's really interesting, the cost of living crisis calling everything into question, and I'm relating this now to Sir Keir Starmer yesterday making his speech, talking about his views on Brexit, and if Labour came into power, they wouldn't go back on the direction of travel. But almost as soon as he'd finished that speech, the Mayor of London coming out saying we're only just beginning to see the impact of Brexit, and actually he'd quite like to rejoin the common market and the customs union. What do you make of that?
Yes, indeed. And Stella Creasy, I think the MP for Walthamstow, made some similar comments. Look, I think ultimately Keir Starmer had to come out and say what he said about Brexit. The question is whether or not he believes it. And there is this inner turmoil within the Labour Party where there are the traditional red wall seats, many of them highly Brexit voting, with the more liberal southern seats in London and the South East who were very strongly Remain. And the balance seems to be tipping more now, perhaps in favour of the red wall. And one has to ask that if this policy position is a successful one, what does that mean for the Conservative Party, which is struggling in the red wall at the moment because of the Prime Minister's behaviour over the last year?
And meanwhile, rumours continuing to swirl about whether or not Sir Keir Starmer will be leader for much longer. I mean, Durham police have said they won't give a running commentary into Beergate, but we're led to believe that either a decision's been made and we haven't been told, or one is imminent. Big upset if that does happen for the Labour Party.
Yes, because indeed the two people who would, well, the other person who's tipped as leader for the Labour Party, other than Keir Starmer, would be Angela Rayner, who's also implicated in this as well. So I do think it would chuck the Labour Party into some sort of crisis, because I'm not sure who the other leadership, the runners and riders, are in the same way that we see in the Conservative Party.
I mean, I tell you, two years ago, everybody was talking about Emily Thornberry. Is she not a runner and rider at the moment?
I wouldn't say that Emily Thornberry was a runner and rider, because her position on Brexit and remaining in the European Union was actually even more extreme than Keir Starmer's. And just thinking about what he has said about Brexit needing to be a success and Labour being behind it and not going back into the single market or customs union, I would posit that if Emily Thornberry wasn't in the shadow cabinet, she'd have been one of those MPs coming out against that.
Well, she's on just before 8 this morning, so we will ask her about that. She's the Shadow Attorney General now. But I suppose other people in contention, if Sir Keir Starmer were to resign this week, Lisa Nandy, Wes Streeting. There's a few front benchers that perhaps might put their hat in the ring.
Perhaps another one, of course, is the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, but he's not got a seat in Westminster, which you need to become the leader of a political party, because you need to lead it from the House of Commons. Look, Labour does have some talented people on its front benches, but the obvious successor would be Angela Rayner, and she is caught up in this Beergate drama as well.
OK, I'll be very good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for that. And as regards those petrol protests, if you were involved in those yesterday, or you were one of the ringleaders in all of that, what are you trying to achieve? We would like to talk to you. We'd like to get you on the programme today, and we would like you to say, will you be deterred by what the Home Secretary is proposing with the police and crime bill, or would you prefer to sit down and just talk this one out? The government has a chance of being on your side. Why are they not? Well, you can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews, and we'll try and get you on
And
the
we
programme
should
this
say
morning.
lots of fear, I think, from the government of these sort of freedom convoys like they saw in Canada over the vaccines. So questions about whether or not that would go down well with Joe Public here in the UK. Let us know whether you would be more in favour of the kind of authoritarian policing if it actually meant that cities ground to a halt as they did in Canada. As Eamonn says, get in touch, let us know your views.
Yeah. Do you not think I'm very sensitive and in tune with my feminine side, that
Yes,
I've
you definitely are.
got my drink to match your outfit
Well,
this morning?
sometimes you just sort of know telepathically what colour tie to wear to match my dress. But I don't make it easy for you, because I don't decide until about 2 seconds before I leave the house. So
Well, there you are. I just asked them to give me an
carefully
Isabel.
considered.
Give me an Isabel there today. That's an Isabel.
Well, if you want to match my drink, brown sludge is the order of the day.
Right, what we're going to do now is we're going to get some more analysis on Keir Starmer's plans to solve the issue with the Northern Irish Protocol. Our man there, Dougie Beattie, is outside Stormont, where I'd like to say the Parliament sits, but it doesn't. But it should. And there we go. Over to you, Dougie. You can explain more.
Well, hello, Eamonn. Hello, Isabel. Welcome to Stormont. As you say, the place where the government should sit. Of course, the First Minister was pulled out of here in February over issues around the protocol. We've had an election and still no unionist supports the protocol, so none of them will come back in here. Keir Starmer's speech was watched last night by quite a few politicians. I was on the phones late into the evening asking a lot of them for their opinion, but Keir's speech was quite strange. He referred constantly, he referred to 1996 in it. Really, if he was going to refer to anything, he should have referred to 1978-79, because oil prices were high with the Iran-Iraq wars, inflation was through the roof, unemployment was starting to head the wrong direction, interest rates were up, and Kate Bush was number one in the charts, and public sectors were going on strike asking for more money. That, of course, heralded Margaret Thatcher in the door, and she managed to get North Sea Oil to get her costs of fuel down. And of course, at that time as well, food in Britain, we were about 82% self-sufficient. We're now down as low as 52% self-sufficient. The war in Ukraine causing problems in and around inflation in oil and gas. Now, he has pointed out what he would do in and around the protocol. I listened to it, and here's what he had to say.
Now, just a few weeks ago, as Adrian said, I had the great pleasure of being in Dublin and in Belfast, where I worked for many years. I was struck by the fact that businesses there are clear. They can make the protocol work. The solutions are there. They've listed them. The desire is there. What was missing was trust, the crucial ingredient that has always characterised progress in relations between our islands. That's been eroded by this government. Labour will change that. We will be the honest broker our countries need, and we will get the protocol working, and we will make it the springboard to securing a better deal for the British people. As well as building trust, Labour would eliminate most border checks created by the Tory Brexit deal, with a new veterinary agreement for agri-products between the UK and the EU.
Well, you could hear that from Keir Starmer. He was talking about a new deal, of course, for Northern Ireland. But he misses the point, totally misses the point. I was with him in Dublin, I was with him in Belfast, and it was strange when I came back here, a lot of the unionist politicians were saying, wasn't it marvellous that the Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin and the Irish Foreign Affairs Minister Simon Coveney were standing up for Ireland? They were very much Irish men, and what they wanted was a British Prime Minister to stand up for the British. And I see that Keir Starmer has started to talk about the middle ground again. Boris Johnson, you could say, took that massive mandate because he was standing up for Britain to Europe. There is a few problems still around us. Article 6, the Act of the Union, of course, causes problem in the Constitution. And the common travel area, that's a big one now. It was OK when Ireland and Britain were both outside the EU, but now that one is inside and one is outside the EU, that is causing problems that will see British citizens having to show British passports to get inside to Britain.
Dougie, thank you very much indeed. Any views? Let us know what you have to say. That's our man Dougie Beattie, live from Belfast. In April, former Conservative MP Neil Parish made headlines when he was forced to resign after being caught watching pornography in the House of Commons.
Well, with culture in Westminster dominating the news agenda yet again after the Tory Deputy Whip, Chris Pincher, was accused of inappropriate behaviour, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, sat down with Neil Parish and asked him if he regretted resigning as a Member of Parliament.
You know, retrospect, hindsight, maybe do you regret resigning in the end? That actually, as you say, given what's happened, it's entirely possible, you know, you would have got through it in some ways.
Yes, but you see, when my family, and I not only talked to my wife, I talked to my son and daughter, and they both said, I think, Daddy, you've got to go. So, you know, you do the right thing. You don't always want to do the right thing. So I'm not trying to make myself into a hero, because I'm not. And I'm a man who's made a big mistake. It was just wrong. So in the end, go. But you see, what I don't want to do and what I don't intend to do is disappear from the face of the earth, because I still have a lot in me, a lot of expertise, a lot of good things I can do, both with charity and with the farming sector, like I said, on food, animal welfare, fair share, you know, all people that need food. So lots of stuff out there. And so, you know, I'm a great believer in using one's talents. And even at this stage where I've blown my talents and my career to smithereens quite spectacularly, I have no intentions of going away and never being heard of again. And I've got to do some good, and there's good in me. And I am actually quite a good person, despite all this. If you ask I used to love talking to the doorkeepers. I like all the people in the restaurants. I always had banter with everybody. I used to get in the morning when I first got there 12 years ago and talk to everybody, because I'm a country boy. I say good morning. I open doors for people. I'm traditional, and they all looked at me as I was mad. But after 12 years, they've all talked to me. And one thing I do want to clear up is, I think one of my leading Conservative select committee chairs said that I was very wrong. I was patronising because I called women ladies. I was brought up in a farming family where it was disrespectful to call a woman. You called them a lady. So when I actually call somebody a lady, I may be old-fashioned, but I am not being disrespectful. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on out there where, you know, your colleagues who you know, perhaps I think ought to know better, should not have had that particular go at me.
You feel it hurts a lot still.
Well, it does, but on the other hand, I appreciate this interview because, you see, do you leave the hurt
inside to burn you away, or do you bring it out? And do you get your, not your side of the story, but just the human side of it, and the fact that, you know, I was absolutely stupid and offensive, but I didn't mean to be, and I was crazy at that moment in time. So, but does that mean that you are entirely finished? And I hope it's not, because I've still got a lot of good in me to do.
It's really interesting to hear his side of the story, isn't it, and his attitude towards things. And the question I think you got to ask is what he did bad, or where he did it bad? Is that what we're condemning him for? Where he did it, or are we condemning him for what he did?
Or do you just accept there's a lot of remorse in what he was saying there? And I think as a human, you can't help but feel moved by that. And you can see that, you know, not only has he lost his career, but his constituencies led to a landslide, so he's damaged his party as well. So just reading in the papers during that interview, he's been quoting that apparently his wife has been chasing him around the kitchen with scissors, threatening to snip off, well, part of his anatomy relating to the issue in which his resignation emerged. And but anyway, they're still married, happily married, and apparently he sat down with his children, as he was saying to Darren there, and talked it all through, all of which I think makes you feel like, you know what, he's owned it and he's admitted what he did was wrong. When he's not in Parliament anymore, he's paid the price. Let us know your thoughts this morning.
Is he finished in public life? Would you give him another chance? Let us know your views, and you can catch the full interview. It's 20 minutes, that Neil Parish interview with Darren McCaffrey this afternoon on GB News. When this afternoon, I've no idea.
I think 3 o'clock.
What? Yeah, 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. Probably they're saying they don't know, but probably 3 o'clock. So I wouldn't go out this afternoon if I were you.
I've got to stay in for that.
I would stay in for that one.
Do you know what I want to talk about this morning?
What,
Do you know what I want to talk about this morning?
What?
Scouts. Were you a Boy Scout?
Absolutely not. I just never attracted to running around in short trousers with a hanky around my neck with grown men
doing useful things like learning to light a fire.
I think that's all. Yes, I think that's all very good, but no, not for me. I thought it wasn't the Scouts themselves put me off. It was the big Scouts.
It was the outfits.
The 50-year-old men who wore hats.
You being Eamonn Holmes, you just went into the look.
Yeah.
What about their attitudes? They've just changed, and they've said they're banning certain words now. They're cancelling phrases like Chinese whispers. The Christian names are out.
So you're not allowed to say the term, what is your Christian name?
Yeah, you have to say your first name or your given name.
But it is still your Christian name if you're a Christian.
Well, presumably you're not allowed to state your religion, because in some way
why
that's
not?
offensive.
I have a Christian name. You have a Christian name.
Yeah, and dinner ladies. What's not wrong with calling them dinner ladies if they are indeed ladies who serve you dinner?
So what would you call a dinner lady?
According to this, the Scouts would like you to call them school meals supervisors or midday supervisors.
Well, do you know, I was best friends with all my school dinner ladies.
We're always your best friends. My son's the same.
One of them was my auntie, as it turned out. I don't think any of them took offence at being called a dinner lady.
Yeah.
They were kept in very high esteem, it has to be said.
Right. Well, if you're a dinner lady, do you find the term offensive? Get in touch this morning. Or, in fact, do you find it offensive to be asked what your maiden name was? Apparently, the Scouts will have you call it your previous name. Mankind is an old, outdated phrase. It should be humankind. And man-made is out as well. It should be artificial or synthetic. All a load of nonsense.
Well, men are just out in general.
Men are out,
Men
you're
are
right.
despised. It's not man's
You've
world,
had your time.
We've had our time. We've served our purpose.
Yeah.
And that was it. But Dinner Ladies as a TV series is quite good.
Yeah, fantastic.
Do you know what that is,
Yes,
actually?
I do.
Victoria Wood.
Never watched it.
No, but
Never
that's...
watched it. I know what it is.
No.
And I do love a dinner lady. Can't go
I just love a dinner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's the point, isn't it? That, you know, that's why I think my son loves the dinner ladies, because they give him food that he loves, and as a result, they love him because he loves the food, and there's a genuine affection.
Well, there's
sweet.
things I didn't love. I mean, they had things like tapioca and semolina and things which I didn't like.
No idea what tapioca.
But it's all gooey and rice. It looks like frog spawn.
I
frog
love
spawn.
semolina.
You love frog spawn?
No.
No, it's...
But growing up, if I was
Apple
sad
crumble.
or unwell, I always wanted semolina. My mum would make
Well, to this day, apple crumble and custard would be a...
Turns your stomach.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
No!
Oh.
No, it's a bit... It's my favourite.
Oh, right, OK.
But yes. We obviously have a producer who never went to school or is interested in talking in these because he's...
Charlie, what was your favourite at school? He liked spotted
What
dick,
is
apparently.
a spotted dick? What is it? They didn't have it in Ireland.
It's like a dense pastry with sultanas in and often with custard.
We didn't
Sounds
have
revolting.
that, and we didn't
have it, but I think
Toad
I
in the
dodged
hole
that.
either.
I love Toad in the Hole. Oh, stop, make me hungry. Right, we've got to move on. We do have to move on. At 6:22, let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this morning.
A man's been arrested following that mass shooting at the 4th of July celebration parade in Chicago.
6 people were shot dead after 22-year-old Robert E. Cremo, and he opened fire with a high-powered rifle from a rooftop. Around 30 people, including a child, were seriously injured. Elsewhere in the country, 2 police officers were killed in another 4th of July celebration in Philadelphia.
The NHS will trial the use of drones to send chemotherapy drugs. It's hoped they'll speed up deliveries of vital medicines with a short shelf life. It's hoped the scheme will pave the way for same-day delivery of medical supplies from anywhere in the country.
And the Duchess of Cornwall has commissioned the Duchess of Cambridge to take her picture for the cover of Country Life magazine. Kate, who's a keen amateur photographer, will take the photographs to celebrate Camilla's 75th birthday later this month. Presumably that's the picture already taken, is it not?
Well, yeah. But why is it in a cemetery?
That's not a cemetery.
Well,
That's
it looks
probably
like a
the
cemetery
gardens.
to me.
No, it doesn't. It's the Gardens of Highgrove or something similar.
What's in the foreground?
That's some flowers that she's sitting on a bench.
What's
sitting on a...
Oh, that's us. Oh, no, that's us. We've messed the picture up.
Yes, that's her arms
Right.
either side. Yeah, and the
I see what you
blurred
mean.
bit.
And then I'm looking at those 2 big tombstones behind.
No, that's what landed gentry have as gates.
As gates.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Landed gentry, royalty no less.
Okay. All right. Now I go to Chicago. We're going to speak to Greg Pratt there. Greg, good morning to you. Thanks for being there for us, just to talk about the latest situation following that shooting yesterday. And Greg is the Chicago Tribune City Hall reporter. Greg, do police think they've got their man? There's been an arrest. Are they still looking for a shooter?
Well, they've got the guy that they think did it. He's a young man who has been glorifying mass shooters on the internet and who, is widely believed to be the guy who did it.
Very strange sitting here this morning. Just literally this time yesterday, we were interviewing a Democratic candidate for Chicago. And just hours after that interview, of course, this tragedy unfolded. And to us over here, it is just truly incomprehensible. But for you in the United States, this is all too common, isn't it? These kinds of horrifying incidents. Is there any kind of sort of fatigue and sort of normalization of this in the United States? Because we still we can't believe it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's this terrible feeling that this is something that we're resigned to. And there are people who are resigned to the fact that no matter what happens, there's a contingent of people who will not stomach any sort of reforms to gun possession, to gun acquisition or anything like that. And then there's people out there who say, well, we got to keep fighting. But in general, we keep going through the same cycle where we have some terrible mass shooting where some maniac kills a lot of people for no reason other than just to kill them. And people get upset and then they move on and then there's another one.
But Greg, what about you personally? Would you think twice about attending certain events? Do you think, no, maybe I'll not go there? Do you get worried about where you attend? And are you selective about the things you attend?
Well, I can't live my life that way, but I think about it. You have to, if I go somewhere, I try to understand how I would get out of there and what could potentially happen and be out of there. But I personally don't believe in not doing things because you're afraid. But I understand why other people do that. And there are people who will, there was a state legislator who was saying she'll never attend a parade again. And she's a politician. She has to attend parades for a living. So think about that. But, I understand that. I just don't personally share that.
Yeah, and look, by that reasoning, no children would go to school because, of course, how many times have schools been the targets of these kinds of horrifying incidents? And just this weekend, I was speaking to a friend. We've got children the same age. She's been offered a job in the States, and she said, there's not a chance I'll be taking that job. Do I want my 5-year-old learning and being drilled in how to cope with an active shooter, which they do, weekly tests where they have to hide under tables and things? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it's astounding what people will get used to in a society or in a culture, and that's what we're used to in our culture.
Greg, thank you for your take on things. Really appreciate you staying up for us. Greg Pratt is the Chicago Tribune City Hall reporter. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break. After that, we'll be discussing gas explosions. Police are still investigating yesterday's blast in Bedford. One person died, but they haven't ruled out the possibility there could be other bodies in there. So we'll be asking, how do you keep yourself safe? That's after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's 6:30 on the dot. Still to come on this morning's programme, is there a male fertility crisis? We'll be speaking to the IVF pioneer, Lord Robert Winston, to get his expert opinion. He joins us in around 15 minutes' time.
And with almost 1 million reports to action fraud over the last 2 years, we're going to be speaking to the Shadow Attorney General. That's Emily Thornberry, who's calling on the government to tackle failings on fraud. And we're going to be also talking to her about the ongoing debate over the Labour leadership, OK? Just before 8 o'clock, she's going to be with us.
And remember, we love to hear from you. Get in touch the usual ways. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us @gbnews.
Gas explosions are not, unfortunately, an uncommon occurrence.
And yet, at least one person's died and 3 others injured after a gas explosion yesterday in a flat in Bedford. Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue described the blast as a major incident.
Well, that was after another gas explosion, you may remember, in Birmingham last week. So should we be concerned about these, and what can you do to protect yourself about all of that? Shweb Awan joins us now. Shweb's a commercial gas engineer. And I look at these things, Shweb, and I go, well, first of all, there must have been a clue. There must have been a clue. You must have been able to hear something or smell something. Not necessarily so, or what would you say?
Well, gas does have a smell to it, so you can pick up that and you'll know there is a gas leak. However, a lot of it is down to negligence in terms of the companies that are actually working on flats and properties that don't actually do the thorough checks that they're supposed to be doing. Also, it's a lot of the builders that are now trying to cut corners. They're not using gas engineers to do the work. Most of them are using just labourers or just to lay the pipes. They don't understand the concept of pipe sizing, the fittings that are supposed to be used correctly, and once everything's buried under the floor, it's all closed.
You can't go back and re-inspect that thing because you have concrete's poured on top of it.
Exactly. Also, with concrete as well, it does react to copper and it will corrode the copper over time. If it's not sleeved, if it's not dental taped, so that can cause a leak over time.
It's so frightening. I mean, the pictures of these 2 explosions in the last 2 weeks have been absolutely catastrophic, and the fact that there have been lives lost as well makes it all the more tragic. I mean, is it really unusual to have these sorts of levels and size of explosions?
It's not that common. However, I was reading the news and it did say that they were trying to use a stove just to cut cost of the gas and all the energy prices that have gone up. That was a new one for me. However, as I said, in something on that scale, when these flats and buildings are built, they are built really fast.
Yeah.
And
but then, mate, I mean, there are building standards and whatever. How come what you're talking about, and it's all part of what we would term as shrinkflation. You know, you buy a bar of chocolate and it's smaller than it used to be, but it's probably more expensive, or a pizza, whatever. But this has to go on in manufacturing cars, building roads, building houses and apartment blocks as well. I mean, would you say that's the case?
It is the case. I do believe that, but then again, it all comes down to the cost.
Well, yes, on which they'll say a gas engineer like you is going to be more expensive than getting a labourer to roughly fit a few parts together. But that's false economy, you think?
It is, but you can't play with gas. At the end of the day, from the meter onwards, the gas engineer is supposed to be responsible for all the pipe work that goes in, not just the appliance itself. Then you've got the servicing of it. Then you know, it's a yearly service that's got to be carried out. And if it's not done correctly, it can cause a leak, can cause a problem. I just bought a property in Devon just recently, and obviously it's for rental purposes. I went there, somebody has passed the gas on it, somebody passed everything is fine with it. I got the certificate for it, but when I actually went in there to test it myself, there was a 4 millibar drop on it. And I couldn't leave it as that. I couldn't sleep at night knowing there's a leak in the house, no matter how small it is. And it was a cooker fitting that had just seeping out. So I put a gas in and out and had to fix that.
Gosh.
So that's what I was saying. So it's not just that, it's the whole industry. They're not doing the work properly.
So there could be leaks in all our homes, meaning all our businesses, that none of us know about. What's your advice?
To get your gas checks done quite a yearly at least, not just because it's a commercial property or it's got to be in your personal home. Just get it checked, and that's the safest way to be.
Good advice. It really is frightening. Shweb Awan, thank you very much for coming in this morning and talking to us about all that.
Thank you. Well, now you know. Stay with us, and we're going to go through the newspapers this morning. Martin Dobney, Emma Brunel, right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
"22 minutes before 7 o'clock. Let's check on what's happening news-wise.
The Home Secretary Priti Patel has called on police to use tougher powers such as imprisonment to stop fuel protesters causing havoc on our motorways. New measures to combat violent demonstrations came in on June the 28th. Several arrests were made on Monday as campaigners calling for a cut in fuel duty targeted the M4 and stretches of the M5 during the morning rush hour.
Downing Street says Boris Johnson did know about a formal complaint against MP Chris Pincher before he was made Deputy Chief Whip. It follows a series of ministers saying Mr Johnson had not been aware of any specific allegations. Mr Pincher, who was based at the Foreign Office at the time, the spokesman says the Prime Minister appointed him following unsubstantiated claims.
And crowds are expected to flock to Wimbledon to watch Brit Cameron Norrie in his first quarter-final match today. As our last singles player standing, hopes are high for the 26-year-old. He's playing Belgium's David Goffin on centre court later today.
I thought he's South African.
Oh, don't get into all the semantics.
You claim anybody,
he was
any
South
tenuous
African,
link.
then he was brought up in Canada, but you know what? We'll take him.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Well, I'm sorry, is
All a
Man
bit
United only full
desperate.
of Manchester people? You take your best people.
Why are you bringing us into it?
I'm just saying, you always get funny about England or UK, but
I
what
just
about
think it's a bit
Manchester
desperate.
United?
Why can't you just say he's a great South African player? Why do
He
you have
is
to
going to
claim
be a
him?
household name after he wins today. You
Do you know
mark
who's
my
a
words.
grumpy git? Not me.
I'm sure you're allowed to say that.
Well, git,
Sporty.
just grumpy git, right? What's his name? That Spiriakos, or
Oh, I
whatever his
know,
name is.
Kyrgios.
Yeah.
I know. I don't like it.
No.
It's just not cricket.
No, because it's tennis.
Also, a red hat. I'm sorry, but it's just so defiant. I don't see the point. Everyone has to wear whites at Wimbledon. That's the rules. Why can't people follow the rules?
No, I agree with you. I mean, white's best.
White is
Looks-
best. I
looks so
actually
good.
hate the colours in all the sports outside of, the traditional whites in cricket, traditional whites in tennis, and then everywhere else, anything goes.
Is that why you were looking for white shorts today, wasn't it?
Don't spill all my secrets.
Anyway, I'm Isabel's fashion advisor.
No, you're not.
She consults Eamonn. How do you think I look like?
We've got a red carpet due tomorrow. Anyway, I was trying to do an emergency order this morning and Eamonn was poo-pooing my suggestions. We'll move on. Let's talk about Brexit. Martin, the Telegraph front page, they're talking about Sir Keir Starmer clashing over good old Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, thank the Lord, 6 years on, Keir Starmer has finally accepted the result of the Brexit referendum. That would be to be positive. You could, however, deduce that he's doing this purely for cynical reasons, because anyone who's campaigned in national elections, as I have twice, knocked on doors all over the East Midlands, the West Midlands of the North, will tell you Keir Starmer's got a massive Brexit problem. People don't believe him, and that's for good reason. 48 times Keir Starmer voted against Brexit. At every turn, he led the People's Vote campaign to overturn the referendum. More positions on Brexit than the Kama Sutra. In, out, shake it all about. Now, here's a guy we simply cannot trust. Suddenly, he's saying, trust me on Brexit, to try and win over the Red Wall voters. Right. Now, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. The voters don't, and his own party don't. Sadiq Khan, straight away, the Mayor of London, on manoeuvres, saying, well, hang on a minute. Londoners didn't vote for Brexit. Actually, 40% of Londoners did. 1.5 million people voted to leave in the capital versus 1.3 million for Khan as mayor. So Brexit's more popular than Khan. This is a U-turn that Jeremy Clarkson will be proud of. I don't think the voters are going to buy it.
All right.
I really don't.
Emma Burnell joins us today for the first time. Emma is a political consultant. What does your political radar say about this, Emma?
I mean, the truth is, Keir Starmer's been saying this for quite a long time. What he's done is put some meat on the bones as to what it means in terms of policy. So he's saying, you know, we have accepted the Brexit referendum since we actually left the EU. There is no going back in, there's no turning back. But what does that mean? I would say it's been a journey. From grudging acceptance to, OK, well, how the hell do we make this work? The truth is, whatever we have right now is not working. You can see that very, very simply in the Northern Ireland Agreement issues. You can see it any time you go to Kent. I'm driving to Kent later in the week, and I'm terrified as to how long it's going to take me to get down the M20, even if I'm not in an Arctic lorry. So Brexit is a long-term process, and getting it right, if you are serious about running the country, then you have to give answers as to how you get as close to right as we can. I was an arch Remainer. I make no bones about that. I wish we hadn't left, but we have. So the truth is, Keir Starmer has to deal with the country we have now, and that's where we're at.
And you would follow him on that, or someone like him who...
I just don't think there's any appetite in the country for reopening the debate as to whether we should go back in.
It's interesting you say there's no appetite. I mean, clearly Sadiq Khan thinks there is. And as Martin was alluding to, he's on manoeuvres because lots of people are eyeing up the prize of perhaps being the leader, because it looks as though there might be movement on the Durham police inquiry as soon as this week. Stella Creasy's also come out saying she'd be in favour of rejoining the customs union and the single market.
There are people saying things like that. Stella may be trying to become leader of the Labour Party, but she's not currently, as I understand it, a shadow cabinet member. No. So it would be quite a leap. Sadiq Khan isn't even an MP. What Sadiq Khan is doing is speaking for the majority voice in London, which is pro-Remain. And there's plenty... It's perfectly reasonable for the elected representative of Londoners to speak with the views of Londoners. That's not going to become Labour Party national policy. It might well become a difference between the Labour government of London and a future Labour government of the UK. And you know what? That's the joy of devolution.
OK. Guys, I want to move on and talk about yesterday's fuel protests and get your opinions of both of you. Martin, first of all, the people who are out there saying the price of petrol and diesel at pumps is absolutely scandalous. We can't afford to live with this anymore. This is ruining so many lives. Are they your friend or are they your enemy? Do you see them different as from the eco-protesters? Is this a different type of protest? Are you prepared to be more tolerant with this protest or not? Is it all a pain in the butt?
I think it's an interesting one, that, because if you think Just Stop Oil should be arrested on the spot and dragged off motorways, and then here these guys are bringing motorways to a virtual standstill by driving at 30 miles an hour, they should also face the same treatment. They are two very different types of protests. One is kind of driven by the ethics of fossil fuels. This is driven by a very different demographic, very different mindset, and that is the cost of living. The protesters yesterday were lorry drivers, small business owners, people who are literally not able to work because they can't afford to fill their vehicles, or people who've lost their jobs because they've been laid off because their employers can't afford to fill vehicles. So this is a cost of living crisis. We're seeing this across Europe. We saw it in France with the Gilets jaunes. That was also a protest, working class movement sparked by the increase in fuel prices. This is our Gilets jaunes. It isn't quite catching on, though, and the coppers were coming down quite hard yesterday. They were blockading with stingers to stop people getting onto motorways. But I do very much sympathise with these guys.
Right. So two different protests, both coming from the same angle. The Home Secretary gets involved and she says that whoever you are, whatever way you're protesting on this, we're going to use the police and crime bill and we're going to crack down on you. What do you think?
Well, be careful what you wish for, right? I mean, the thing is, I absolutely stood against the police and crime bill because I feel that we do have a right to protest in this country, and whether that's a union picket line or a person protesting climate change, or a person protesting the cost of fuel, or a person protesting something I completely disagree
I just
with.
want to get in your brain, right? I want to get in your mind.
Oh, God.
You're going down the M4, right? You're trying to go to Bristol or whatever it happens to be, and you're crawling at a snail's pace because someone is doing what they're doing. Are you still as tolerant?
Am I in my personal head screaming at them? Absolutely, of course I am. But that's the point. Protest is not supposed to be fun and jolly and happy and making everyone's lives better. The point of a lot of protest is it's disruptive. And I think we have a right to be disruptive. I don't think the law should be clamping down on that. Where I think you have, Martin is right, is you've got to have consistency. If you agree with the police and crime bill, then you agree with clamping down on these protesters.
When you apply the rules to fit your agenda. Can I just read out some views on this? There have been so many coming in. Debbie says, how dare the Home Secretary say to people trying to get to work they cannot protest about fuel when she can't do her job by stopping migrants coming into the country. Another one, Betty in Dorset, thank you for getting in touch. Betty says, why are the fuel protesters wasting fuel when they complain it's too high a price? Why aren't they looking at contributing to society, and if not working, why are they allowed to claim benefits? Tracy says, I'm 100% with the protesters. If I see a protest, I will join it. They do need to treat them the same as the eco lot to bring the roads to a standstill. Not sure if I understand that.
No, I don't understand. I actually know, folks, just when you're getting in touch with us, are you for them? Are you against them? Do you see a difference between what they're doing and what the eco-protesters are doing? Should they be treated the same? That's all we want to know. Is the Home Secretary right in getting involved in all of this? Right, so now that's clear as mud. OK.
Tax cuts.
Tax cuts, Martin.
Yeah.
And this front page of the Express.
Yeah, so anybody could be forgiven for thinking that we voted for Boris and got Jeremy Corbyn in terms of taxation in Britain, the highest taxes since World War II. There's a 40-year high in inflation, and then alluded to the previous story, the cost of fuel, the cost of living is through the roof. And so belatedly, Boris is throwing a national insurance tax cut our way. He's doing that by raising the threshold to £12,570 before you start paying NI, which he claims will bonus 30 million workers, and he name checks hairdressers, care workers and receptionists. So this is the kind of working class tax cut is what he's throwing the voters' way, which I think will probably outweigh the Brexit promise of Keir Starmer. But in terms of the absolute numbers, I mean, they cut 5p on fuel duty, and the price of fuel went up by more than 5p in a couple of days. So these kind of tax cuts, I think, are welcome, but they are really a drop in the ocean, especially when you see 46% of every drop of fuel we put in your tank goes on fuel duty or VAT.
Right. Emma, there's a really very important thing I want to do, right?
Okay.
And it is to talk about breakfast cereals.
Absolutely vital.
No, I do have to say, I'm not saying I'm a good person in this. I'm not saying I'm right.
Do you eat breakfast cereal?
I eat ricicles because they're ricicles are... you can't find ricicles in supermarkets anymore. They've taken them off the shelves. I'm in, what's the word?
Withdrawal.
Withdrawal symptoms, cold turkey. So my next go-to cereal is Frosties. Tony the Tiger. And what?
I mean, it's just so bad for you, Eamonn.
Well, I know that. I'm not saying it isn't bad for me, but there's been a court case, there's been a ruling on this, and I can't get my ricicles anymore. Where am I going to be with my Frosties?
I mean, I think there are separate issues between what you personally, Eamonn, should and should not have for breakfast.
Yeah, I don't know, I shouldn't.
It's your choice,
Yeah.
your personal choice. You should be able to buy ricicles, but possibly not have ricicles shoved in your face, which I think is where this court case has come down.
You know what happened? When I was young and we used to sit and they used to give free gifts away, they used to give Star Trek badges, Captain Scarlet badges.
Oh, I remember the crisps badges. I had so many of those. In fact, I still got them. I collect badges.
But we used to say to my mum, can we have Frosties or ricicles? And my mum would always say the same thing. They're too expensive. You're not having them. They're too expensive, so we get Weetabix instead.
Good, very healthy stuff.
I mean, I don't drink milk, so I've never eaten cereal.
Yeah.
I do these days try to start my day with a healthy dose of fruit. This is because I am desperately trying to lose the last bit of the weight that I've lost overall. I've lost quite a lot of weight.
Yeah, you have,
What did you lose? What did you lose?
I used to be 25 stone.
Wow. Well done.
So I've lost half of my body weight.
Respect. Congratulations.
Still a few stone to go, as I'm sure your viewers will be noticing.
I actually read one of your articles about that last night. I was reading up on you, and you've talked about it quite publicly, haven't you? Yeah, you had some sort of help with that.
I started off with gastric sleeve surgery, which is where they reduce most people's stomach is the size of a melon. Mine was reduced to the size of a lemon, and that kicked me off. It was but I've been doing Slimming World ever since. I've lost 6 stone on Slimming World. I lost 5 stone that way.
Oh, well, still have the slim.
No, it's not an actual thing. It just turns your stomach into a smaller thing. There's no foreign body inside of me. Not at the moment.
The day's young.
Sorry.
But your stomach is smaller then.
My stomach was smaller, but the stomach is a muscle. So like anything, because you use it regularly, it then builds itself back up. So I can now, I don't eat the way I did, but I'm no longer sick if I eat a normal-sized meal. So I have to be disciplined with my eating, with my exercise. But in order to get to the place where I was able to do that, that's what the operation gave me, was that kickstart. And I had to do the work up here. It's as much a mental thing as it is a physical thing.
You were comparing your experience to Kelly Osbourne's and saying this is an ongoing battle and it's not just a quick fix overnight.
No, absolutely not. And then I think there's a lot of misconception around people who have this kind of surgery, where it's like, oh, they're just cheating. And I promise you, you'll still have to put in a lot of hard work.
Just finally and briefly, what has all of this got to do with Frosties?
Well, I think the idea behind the initial legislation, which is what they're challenging, is that they're not promoting it. Kellogg's has challenged it because their unhealthier end of their cereals, which I'm afraid Ricicles and Frosties are part of, were being really sort of heavily promoted in supermarkets, put to the front. And what the new regulations are is that you cannot promote these at checkout on the ends of aisles, the places where where your 5-year-old kid who loves Tony the Tiger is going to grab it first of all.
Listen, fascinating talking to you. Great to hear your story, Emma. And Emma and Martin are going to be back in about 40 minutes' time. And
I actually just asked Martin to stick around for the next bit, 'cause he might be interested in
He might be. And just also, so if anybody knows what happened to Ricicles, please do let me know.
Look, we're going to talk now about male fertility. Researchers have warned that humans could become extinct if sperm count in many countries continues to fall at current rates. So, what is to blame for fertility issues? There's nobody better to talk to about all of this than the pioneer of IVF himself, Lord Robert Winston. Welcome to the programme. Very good to see you this morning. Let's do some myth-busting first of all. How worried should we be about male fertility?
I think we shouldn't be too worried about scarce stories about fertility, frankly, at all. One of the problems is that the humans are so fertile that we actually overpopulate the world anyway. So I'm not convinced that a bit of subfertility, if it exists, would be a problem. But actually, I do not think we will die out because males are not being capable of impregnating their females. I think the evidence for that is really very poor.
I was just wanting to quote the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, who say that the average sperm count has more than halved among Western men in the past 40 years. I mean, do you accept that there has been a decline in recent decades? And if there has, is there anything that men should be doing to avoid that?
Well, I'm very familiar with the researchers at the Hebrew University, who I admire, and I respect the excellent research they do there. But actually, the way we measure sperm counts now is very, very different from what it was 40 years ago. And so much of the problem, I think, is new ways of measurement and more accurate measurement. So I think that's one of the issues. I think also when you look at different fertility clinics, which we did, for example, at my own in London when I was working there, was that actually, when we rechecked these figures, we never saw such a marked decline. And I think it very much depends on how they're observed. However, I do agree there may be some reduction in fertility, but it doesn't seem to have prevented people getting pregnant.
And what about oestrogen in the water? We're talking about water quality in London. Stories about water all over the papers today.
Yeah.
And it's something, again, perhaps there's a myth, but I just, obviously, you know, your expertise always very welcome on these issues. Should people be worried about the sort of oestrogen that's leaked into the water systems from female contraceptives?
You mean through urine, of course?
Yeah.
Because that's how these hormones would be excreted. Well, I have to tell you the truth. I've never actually tested lavatory water, and I don't know anybody who has. But it is true that certainly in many rivers and some other watercourses, we have seen estrogens which are probably phytoestrogens, which are or estrogens which are not necessarily human estrogens, which may come from, for example, plants, and also various waste which is tipped into water supplies. That probably is not a good thing, but then there are hundreds of different molecules which unfortunately are polluting our waters. We certainly should have cleaner water than we have, but whether in fact this really makes a difference to humans, it may do to fish, I think is unclear.
I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot, but I'm interested in your views, because it's such a hot topic at the moment, about what's been happening in the States with Roe versus Wade. We did an interview this week on this programme with a pro-lifer who was very much of the view that life begins at conception. And of course, there are implications on that view in the IVF world. And of course, if that is the view, then the destruction of fertilised embryos becomes highly controversial as well. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I think it's a terrible step back for democracy. I think, unfortunately, women should have absolutely the right to choose. I don't think parliamentarians or anybody else should have nearly as much power as they seem to. And for the Supreme Court, for example, as happened in the United States, to make this ruling with 6 elderly men, I think is really quite unreasonable. In my view, we should be much more aware that these things will continue to have these sorts of advances, have made a massive difference to populations and to women. And this cancellation of Roe versus Wade in some states is another negative step back for the United States, I'm afraid. It won't happen here, I'm quite certain of that, but we need to make sure that people understand there's no such thing as life beginning at conception. Sperm are alive, egg are alive, and conception is only a moment of about 24 hours. And so, really, there is no one point in time when you can say a human is made. That is a general situation in all mammals, as in fact fertilization develops. Moreover, nature actually destroys most fertilized eggs anyway through natural processes. Not many naturally normal fertilized eggs actually survive and become babies. That's just one of the processes of the imperfect nature of human conception.
Absolutely fascinating to get your views on that. Really appreciate you talking to us this morning. Thank you so much, Lord Robert Winston, Emeritus Professor of Fertility Studies at Imperial College in London, of course, pioneer of IVF. Thank you.
With that, we'll take a break. We're back top of the hour with more on the fuel protests.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Priti Patel urges police to arrest fuel protesters as they bring motorways to a standstill.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Just after 7 o'clock, it's a Tuesday morning, the 5th of July, on television, on radio. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Home Secretary has urged the police to arrest and charge fuel campaigners that block the motorway amid warnings that the protests could continue through the summer.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is facing a party revolt over Brexit after he vowed in a speech not to take Britain back into the single market. It comes as he prepares to learn if he will be fined over Beergate.
Police in Chicago have arrested a 22-year-old man in connection with a mass shooting that took place during a 4th of July parade. The incident killed 6 and injured 30 others, including at least 1 child.
And 1 person has died and 3 others have been taken to hospital after a major gas explosion at a block of flats in Bedford. Police say further bodies could be found in the coming days as they search the rubble.
And remember, we'd love to hear from you and involve you in all of our discussions. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews. In fact, many of you have done so already.
Yeah, Jeff in Rotherham has said, I'm with the protesters. The oil producers are robbing us blind under the cover of a war. Sue in York says the price of fuel is outrageous. I reluctantly support the protesters.
Alan says Johnson's dragging his heels on tax cuts, so I support the fuel protests 100%. The clown has to go. If this adds to the pressure, then I'm delighted. And you've just read Sue's one, so I won't reread that one. And we're also on the lookout for a people's champion.
Okay, so if you know someone special who does special things in your area, your community, your street, and they deserve a bit of recognition, they deserve a shout out, then please do nominate us. You email us with the subject title Breakfast People's Champion. So if you're emailing on gbviews@gbnews.uk, Breakfast People's Champion, we'll do the rest.
So to our top story this hour, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has urged police to use new powers to arrest and charge fuel campaigners who brought motorways to a standstill yesterday in protest at record fuel costs.
Well, these campaigners are now warning that protests could continue for months, adding to a summer of discontent. Let's now speak to Albi Amankona, who's a political commentator, for his take on all of this. You know, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether people support them or whether they don't, my goodness me, we can't travel anywhere. We can't go through airports. The trains are disrupted. Now the roads are disrupted as well. Goodness me, what do you make of all of this, Albi?
I think it just adds to the general feeling in the country at the moment that things seem to slightly be falling apart and people seem to be resorting to direct action to try and get the government to listen. Whether or not it's Mick Lynch of the RMT who was leading the picket fences a couple of weeks ago, whether or not it's these protesters who are protesting because they want fuel duty and VAT to be cut on fuel because the cost of living crisis is biting, it just adds to a general feeling that things are getting worse, not better.
Well, it was interesting during the paper review just then, the subject of the police and crime bill came up and the argument was made that you can't cherry pick when you use these strong new powers. I mean, a lot of people were unsure, even from within the Conservatives, about whether this was bordering on authoritarian. People seemed happy enough to use it when they didn't agree with the cause. But there's a lot of public sympathy for the protests yesterday. And suddenly people are thinking, hang on a minute, I don't want to spend 6 months in jail for just complaining that the government hasn't cut fuel duty. So could this raise questions then about Priti Patel's new police crime bill?
There were already questions about the police and crime bill, mostly from the libertarian right of the party. So you had people like Steve Baker who were very vocal about not liking this policy, because it does feel quite authoritarian, and there are many Conservatives who are of that view, because ultimately it does open a bit of a Pandora's box when this policy, when people say, well, I don't like it for this thing which I agree with, but I like it for this thing which I disagree with, and that is where there are sticky spots with authoritarian policies like these.
Now, Albie is a Conservative, and I want to talk to you now about this poll about a possible future leader. 700 Conservatives polled on this, and the results are that Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, was the most favourite candidate in terms of who should succeed Boris Johnson, if that is necessary, followed by Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss. Can you run through the runners and riders there for us?
Absolutely. Well, the only candidate that actually beat all of them was Don't Know. So I think that's actually the really core, interesting part, is that whilst, you know, the names that are up there, Penny Mordaunt, Ben Wallace, Liz Truss, all very popular within the Conservative Party, actually, there's no consensus around one of the figures, which, if there was, that would really put the Prime Minister in danger.
Although there seems to be quite a lot of consensus about who they don't want, and that appears to be Jeremy Hunt. It says Boris-bashing Hunt would lose leadership to every one of his rivals, according to that Tory members' poll.
Precisely. I mean, I think one thing that Conservatives really don't like is disloyalty, which is why if you continue to look at the polls for support of the Prime Minister within the Conservative Party, you'll actually see them really mostly above 50%. And Jeremy Hunt has sort of been seen as consistently a thorn in the Prime Minister's side. He's been on manoeuvres, been on many morning shows talking about how he would have done things differently during the pandemic. And I suppose this poll from Conservative Home shows that he's actually not perhaps the leadership contender that we need in the Conservative Party.
OK. Albie, thank you very much indeed. Albie Amankona there. Thank you. The time is now 7:08. 6 people have been killed, 30 injured. It's a mass shooting at an Independence Day parade in Chicago yesterday.
A 22-year-old, Robert E. Crimo, has been arrested in connection with the incident. Well, earlier we spoke to Greg Pratt. He's a Chicago Tribune City Hall reporter, and we asked him what he knew about the suspect.
Well, they've got the guy that they think did it. He's a young man who has been glorifying mass shooters on the internet and who, you know, is widely believed to be the guy who did it.
Very strange sitting here this morning. Just literally this time yesterday, we were interviewing a Democratic candidate for Chicago. And just hours after that interview, of course, this tragedy unfolded. And to us over here, it is just truly incomprehensible. But for you in the United States, this is all too common, isn't it? These kinds of horrifying incidents. Is there any kind of sort of fatigue and sort of normalization of this in the United States? Because we still just, we can't believe it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's this terrible feeling that this is something that we're resigned to. And there are people who are resigned to the fact that no matter what happens, there's a contingent of people who will not stomach any sort of reforms that to gun possession, to gun acquisition or anything like that. And then there's people out there who say, well, we got to keep fighting. But in general, we keep going through the same cycle where we have some terrible mass shooting where some maniac kills a lot of people for no reason other than just to kill them. And people get upset and then they move on and then there's another one.
But Greg, what about you personally? Would you think twice about attending certain events? Do you think, no, maybe I'll not go there? Do you get worried about where you attend? And are you selective about the things you attend?
Well, I can't live my life that way, but I think about it. You know, you have to, if I go somewhere, I try to understand how I would get out of there and what could potentially happen and be out of there. But I personally don't believe in not doing things because you're afraid. But I understand why other people do that, and there are people who will, you know, there was a state legislator who was saying she'll never attend a parade again, and she's a politician. She has to attend parades for a living. So think about that. But, you know, I understand that. I just don't personally share that.
Yeah, and look, by that reasoning, no children would go to school because, of course, how many times have schools been the targets of these kinds of horrifying incidents? And just this weekend, I was speaking to a friend. We've got children the same age. She's been offered a job in the States, and she said, there's not a chance I'll be taking that job. Do I want my 5-year-old learning and being drilled in how to cope with an active shooter, which they do, weekly tests where they have to hide under tables and things? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it's astounding what people will get used to in a society or in a culture, and that's what we're used to in our culture.
Greg Pratt there from the Chicago Tribune. Time 11 minutes past 7. Latest news headlines are these.
Downing Street says the Prime Minister did know about complaints involving the MP Chris Pincher before he was made Deputy Chief Whip. The spokesman said that Boris Johnson appointed him following unsubstantiated claims. Ministers previously claimed Mr Johnson hadn't been aware of specific allegations against Mr Pincher, who worked in the Foreign Office at the time.
The NHS will trial drones to send chemotherapy drugs to speed up deliveries of vital medicines. It's hoped the scheme will pave the way for same-day delivery of medical supplies from anywhere in the country.
The Duchess of Cornwall has commissioned the Duchess of Cambridge to take her picture for the cover of Country Life magazine. Kate, who is a keen amateur photographer, has taken the photographs to celebrate Camilla's 75th birthday later this month.
Look, the whole thing is the schools come to an end for the summer, and everybody's talking about, do you want a holiday? Can you be bothered taking a holiday? What's the risk like with all the cancellations? You can't. Trains are unpredictable. Airports, roads.
You've cancelled your summer holiday plans because you can't face an airport.
I couldn't be bothered. I mean, it's hard enough for me to get back to Belfast with flights being cancelled. No, I just, honestly, just this year, not for me. Or if you do it outside school holidays, maybe fine. But
well, the roads now, as we've been saying this morning, also chaos. And lots of people feeling understandably nervous about travelling. So we're asking this morning expert advice on where we as individuals stand in terms of our rights when it comes to travel insurance.
Well, new data from Which Consumer Group shows as many as 4 in 10 travel insurance policies, that's 40%, do not cover customers when airport or airline staff go on strike. But what do I know? The man here knows everything. He's Nicky Kelvin. He's head of the Point Sky UK, and he's with us now, and travel is his thing. So basically, what's the advice, Nicky? I mean, you look at it, you don't need us to tell you what's going wrong. Everybody's frightened. Everybody's afraid to move. What would you say?
Well, it is chaos out there. I think there was a bit of hope that maybe as we approach the summer, staffing will get a little bit better. We saw chaos at Easter, but it's not abating, and it's getting worse potentially. We're seeing some striking across Europe, and that's causing even more issues than the existing short staffing. And the new thing now is insurance. So this Which report is saying lots of people, usually you look to your travel insurance for things like medical cover.
Yeah.
But you're not thinking about losing your bags, losing your flights because of strikes, other curtailment of your trips. And so the key advice here when it comes to insurance is you have to check the small print, and you have to find policies that are going to cover you both for striking, but also COVID. People are, if you get COVID and you can't go on your trip, you want an insurance policy that's going to look after you for that as well.
And they exist then, those policies. Do they cost more than ordinary policies, and are people basically going to have to take on more risk, essentially?
You can find the policies. Generally, travel insurance policies are not that expensive, so it's always just about looking at that small print and finding the ones. And they are
Couldn't be bothered. Couldn't be bothered. And I'll tell you, and it's great, Nicky, you're a genius, right? You're a genius, and you told us about locator tags on luggage the last time, whatever it is. But I'm going to tell you this, and I do not understand this. You want to travel? My father used to have this phrase, it takes a priest to say mass. Get a travel agent. That's what they do. Why? I mean, it's like going to a supermarket. Why am I checking in my own goods? Why am I paying? Why am I putting stuff in a bag? It's not my job. You know, doing travel is not my job. It's the job of a travel agent. I just could not be bothered.
Some people do love it. They love the excitement of finding their trips. But I understand for some people, going to a travel agent, actually, that is a way of protecting yourself. You get that expert advice. But
paying for it, aren't you?
But you're gonna pay.
You're
more
not
money.
really. You're not really. You look at it. You think of all the bother hanging on those lines. Do I have travel insurance included in this? Do I not have travel insurance? I genuinely feel safe with a trusted professional, and I think let them do that.
Even with a trusted professional these days, they aren't going to help you when your cabin crew are striking or when you're in the queue at the airport. And so actually it is a good way to feel more comfort, but still you're on your own once you're in the airport or you're on your trip. So I think having protection from things like insurance. So a lot of airlines actually offer special policies for things like COVID, and so it's worth checking with your airline if you're covered as well. And also your credit cards. So lots of credit cards cover different things like baggage loss. So if your baggage is delayed, the airlines don't pay you a lot of money, but your credit card might do. They might look after you for your expenses.
Are there particular airlines or particular airports that are doing well through all of this? I mean, we talk about the boss of EasyJet yesterday quitting, or the COO.
Yeah.
He's just, had enough of it all. So EasyJet's clearly struggling.
Yeah.
Are there any winners in all of this? Any particular airports that are doing well?
There are some winners. So actually at the Points Guy last week, we looked at airline cancellations across the board, and we looked at how many flights were going, how many flights were cancelled. And there were some standout successes. I think British Airways, EasyJet are the two that have not done very well and that are affecting a lot of people. Surprisingly, we picked out three that were the safe ones at the moment. That was Ryanair. Some people potentially surprised by that being one of the very best. Virgin Atlantic, who didn't cancel one flight in June.
Really?
So they were a good one.
Why would that be?
I think Virgin are a slightly different story. So when you look at British Airways or an EasyJet that have thousands of flights, Virgin, by comparison, is a smaller airline, but they didn't get rid of as many staff over COVID. They furloughed a lot of people, and so they were able to scale back up. But they have a smaller fleet and less flights going, but they still managed to operate all of their flights, which is really impressive. And the other one, which came out really well on top, was Jet2. They've also done really well.
And would Ryanair be doing well because they're just used to basically working to a very tight budget and,
Tight schedule.
There's
no messing around.
No extra flesh on the bones, no flabbiness.
I think you could say the same about EasyJet, but they've performed vastly differently, EasyJet and Ryanair. And I think the big thing was airlines who took COVID as an opportunity to shed a lot of staff and didn't expect the rebound to happen as quickly, and it did, and they just can't hire the staff that they need as fast because a lot of people have left the industry as well, so they can't find the people.
The worst thing about airports, of course, are people. Generally, and
crack me up, Eamonn.
Well, it's true. If you want a conglomeration of stupid people, go to an airport. What I really don't understand is when you do all your business and you check in, you do this, and you go to the check-in desk, all they really have to say is, have you got baggage or not baggage, which you've told them in advance. There's really nothing they've got to ask you except confirm your booking. How come I always get stuck behind people who then the check-in person has got to go on the phone and be speaking to a phone, and then a phone down, and then this, and then that. What is there? When I check into the airport, I go, hello, there you are, the name's Holmes, I'm on the 7:30 to Belfast, whatever it is. And that's it. I'm on. I've never once been stopped and kept half an hour at check-in.
You definitely get a bit of special treatment.
I don't get a bit of special treatment.
People go, Mr. Holmes, come this way.
No, but
I'll tell you what,
after you.
You'll be lucky, Eamonn, if you even get a checkout these days. In all seriousness, you go to Heathrow, and most of it is stick your bag on the whatever you call it, conveyor yourself, get your check-in details out.
As again, that shouldn't be my
job.
job.
Nobody there to talk to.
No, but when there is someone there to talk to, how come it's full of people who then take out these papers and people look at them and people are on the phone and whatever it is? Genuinely, it is. I mean, you can sit and mock and laugh all you want, but I've never had a situation where I'm booked in advance. There it is. There's my ticket. Thank you very much indeed. Are we on time? Yes, we're on time. What on earth do they find time to talk about? Because I'll tell you why. They're idiots most of the time. That's why they go and say, oh, actually, it's a train ticket you have here, sir. It's a train. You should really be on a train.
So, I was in Portugal last year, and we couldn't get through with those, those travel locator forms unless we had a seat ticket, allocated, but we hadn't got a seat ticket because we hadn't checked in. It was like
See, stupid people.
No,
that's what I mean.
The system was stupid. It was flawed. We literally could not fill in the form until they had checked us in, but they wouldn't check us in until we'd completed the form. So we were sat there going, what do you want to do about this? That's the sort of issue that
Give me those 2 bottles, right? Two of them,
They're quite heavy.
Right, heavy and full of liquid, right? My wife going through airport security. Doot, 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 doot. Oh, well, madam, is this your bag? Yes. Do these 2 containers full of hydrogen dioxide or whatever, do they belong to you? Well, yes. Well, you can't bring those on board, madam. Well, I was able on the last flight to bring them. No, you weren't, darling. Well, I was. No, you weren't, darling. No, but you did. That's right.
Ruth,
so,
help me out.
have I ever been stopped with my luggage to say, you can't bring that bomb on board, Mr.
traveller.
Holmes? No, but I am an educated traveller. There's people in airports and they just shouldn't be there. They've never been there before. Like, you know, when they just stand. The great thing is when you want to bump into somebody and they're looking at signs, people just stop in the middle of an airport.
Look,
and they look up.
You know what it is? It's because you're a commuter between Belfast and here and you're back and forth all the time. My husband used to be like this because he flew back and forth from Amsterdam. Anyone else that didn't do it every weekend didn't know every trick in the book.
Would you put those in your handbag?
I might if I was busy and thinking about lots of other things and I wasn't a regular. It's easy to be judgmental if it's not like... Anyway, look. He's had a rant, hasn't he, Nicky? Thank you for indulging us.
Oh, this was great. I've enjoyed this very much. I might take one of these for my next flight.
Yeah,
actually.
have that. That's a GB
You might want to wash it first.
I don't know what's in it. Probably petrol or something. I don't know what's there.
Nicky Calvin, the Points guy, full of really good tips on how you should know your rights, where to get the top insurance.
But Nicky, seriously, where you come in, I mean, and I am
winding him up.
No. Well, why do you ignore these things when this is reality? This is real life. Travelling is hideous.
It is.
Airports are the most hideous places on earth. And the worst airports are the biggest airports. So if you're flying out of Belfast or maybe Bristol or Glasgow or Southampton...
London City.
Is London City a good one?
Yes, London City's
That's where
superb.
I'm going from my summer holes.
And they go to most destinations.
Yeah.
You know, and they're small. But government policy is to get the biggest airports possible, full of terminals, full of stupid people, full of
but
they're oversubscribed. No, definitely smaller is the way forward.
But small airports don't check a bag. That's
Top
the
tip.
advice.
That's the go home message.
Yeah,
Got it, Nicky.
But
it's a pleasure.
You say don't check in a bag. Well, you see, this is a nonsense. Like, I'm sure this woman here, my wife, would have 4 bags.
No, I used to travel all the time with just a carry-on.
It's not now. You've got 2 children
smart.
now.
No, that's true.
You'd have a camel, 4 Sherpas,
yeah, no,
and
that
6.
is true. Kids, isn't it? Yeah,
Yes,
no,
that
you're
makes
right.
a difference. I know I'm right. You don't have to tell me I'm right. I know I'm right. Anyway.
Hurry up, because otherwise we
Thanks
can't
very
talk about the
much. Thank you very
sport.
much indeed.
We've got to go, because Paul Coyte's coming in to talk about Cameron Norrie. He's going to become a household name from today. Mark my words. Back
After
in a
the
bit.
weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A fine day to come for many, but there will be a few showers around. There will be a lot of cloud around, and there will be further rain in the north later, more especially overnight and into tomorrow. At the moment, high pressure's trying to build in from the west. It will have more success later in the week, but for the time being, weather fronts are still toppling around the top of that high to bring some weather into northern parts of the country. That's what we saw yesterday, and we'll see further showers here and there, mainly northwest England, North Wales, Northern Ireland and parts of northern Scotland through the day. But actually some decent sunny spells coming through for Scotland, for northern England. I think for Northern Ireland, for parts of Wales and the south, a lot of cloud remains, and as a result, temperatures not far from average, perhaps a little below in some spots, 22 Celsius for London, 19 for Glasgow, 18 for Belfast, for example. But it's for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland where the cloud thickens later, and by the evening, spells of rain move in. Those outbreaks of rain crossing Scotland into Northern England, North Wales, North Midlands and Northern Ireland overnight. Mostly it's on and off, but for Western Scotland it's persistent and it will build up over the hills. But with the cloud arriving from the northwest overnight and with milder air arriving as well, it's not going to be as cool as we start off tomorrow. Temperatures in the mid-teens in many spots. And in the south, the rain doesn't reach here. In fact, it's expected to stay dry through the week across southern parts of England and Wales. Sunshine coming through as well, a sunnier day compared to today, whilst it is also warmer, 22 to 24 Celsius. Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England though, cloud and outbreaks of rain, again most persistent over the hills of western Scotland where it will be cool and blustery. Thursday and Friday more widely settled, I think, and warming up, particularly in the south with highs of 27 by Friday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Very good to see you again. 27 minutes past 7.
Still to come on this morning's programme as Prince Charles and Camilla set off for their tour of Wales. Later today, we'll be discussing Camilla's increasing popularity as she's photographed by her daughter-in-law, Kate, for the front cover of Country Life magazine. Katie Nicholl joins us at 8:15 to discuss that in more detail.
And just before 8 o'clock, the Shadow Attorney General, that's Emily Thornberry, who's calling on the government to tackle the fraud problem throughout the whole country, and we'll ask her about the ongoing debate over the Labour leadership as well.
And get in touch at gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Sport back pages stacking up like this this morning, and we begin with what are we going to begin with? It would be nice to say the Mail it is, and it would be there we are, the Mail. Ronaldo Riddle is the headline there. He didn't turn up for training at Carrington yesterday, and they're talking about transfer speculation. Ronaldo to Chelsea. Okay, we go to the Mirror. Nan City. £50 million player Calvin Phillips, who was transferred from Leeds, admits that his grandma convinced him to quit for Leeds for Man City, and that's a big decision because he's a Leeds lad, born and bred, and Nan was there with all the advice. And here's the Express. The England cricket team are believers as they close in on a record run trace. Are we not seeing the Express? No, we've not got the Express? There we go, sorry. They're 119 runs short of their target, 7 wickets in hand. Paul Coyte with me now. Where do you want to begin? What do you want to talk about?
I tell you what, shall we get the Ronaldo thing out of the way? It's the elephant in the room. I thought maybe
Chelsea
we should just deal with that.
They're in there.
They are in there. But the thing is, it's the player power that also we mentioned the other day, is if a player decides he doesn't want to play for a club, it doesn't matter who they are. I mean, we are talking about Cristiano Ronaldo, for crying out loud, but if he doesn't turn up for training, already the excuses are coming up. It's a family issue.
Yeah.
That's the reason. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
He could go to a European team, probably, and the United faithful would forgive him. I think going to Chelsea will really tarnish his legacy. I mean, an amazing player, but come on, we don't want to see him going to Chelsea.
I imagine that the reason that he'd gone to Manchester United was the love for the club. You know, that's where he really made his name and had all that success, and then moved away, came back, the conquering hero, and you think that would be very important to him. And you're right, and if he went to Chelsea, how would that be? I mean, what does he want to play for? Is it because He still wants to win things. He's won everything.
Well,
Is that the most important thing?
It's Champions League. I mean, he spent 107 years in the Champions League, hasn't he, successfully?
Yes.
So
Want to make it 108.
So, yeah. So that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think I'd be upset if I was a Manchester United fan today if he went there.
Let's go to Wimbledon.
Yes.
Tell us about this guy, Nick
Kyrgios. Yeah.
Kyrgios.
He is a slight troublemaker. I think we're agreed. Now, I'm conflicted on this because there's part of me, and I don't know about you, Isabel, because I know you love your tennis, but do we like him or don't we?
Look, I like his tennis. He's a fantastic player.
He is a terrific tennis
player. And, you know, what he can do with a tennis racket, it defies all logic a lot of the time.
It's all the other stuff.
But unfortunately, it's all the other stuff. And it's just the example it sets to youngsters. And is it just is it the beginning of a change of era in tennis? I don't know. I mean, just a little act of rebellion like a red hat at the end is upsetting to me. It's contrived.
It's contrived, isn't it?
And the talking back to the referee,
the umpire, yeah.
It's not on, and I think it's bad example.
See, I don't know about you, but when we talk about the Mavericks of the past, the Jimmy Connors, the John McEnroe, there's one point that nobody is making,
which is
the fact that there were line judges that they could disagree with. Now, with Hawkeye. Whether the ball is in or out.
Yeah.
And when we think of McEnroe, the ball was clearly in, there was chalk dust and all this, and he would scream and shout. That was the basis of all their arguments, was line calls. Whereas now you cannot argue with that. 100%. So can you imagine what would be happening if there was no eagle eye in that situation? So it's just a man that I don't know whether he truly believes in everything he's saying. I don't know whether a lot of it's contrived. I mean, we know what the wearing whites at Wimbledon is all about. So he comes in a pair of Air Jordans with red on, the red cap. It's just trying to make a point. And it's like, I can see what you're doing. You're just trying to yank Wimbledon's chain a little bit. But it's box office and it's making people want to watch.
Are people going to want to stand at football matches? And
wait, we can talk about Cameron Norrie really quickly because I know you don't think he's. No, don't roll your eyes.
He's going to win today. I'm very confident that he's going to win. David Goffin of Belgium, he plays today and centre court and surely, I mean Cameron Norrie. I say surely. I feel bad. I want to touch wood and just keep my fingers crossed. But surely, if he gets through, he's got a great chance. He's a terrific tennis player.
And this guy's got a good personality as well. So he's everything you would like, Isabel. He plays by the rules.
He's the anti-Kyrgios, isn't he? He's the anti-Kyrgios.
Antithesis to Kyrgios.
Yeah, that's exactly what he is. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
OK. Well, let's talk about football now. And see
if stay where you are.
See if standing. Who's going to introduce it? How widespread is it going to be?
Right. Well, we've already had the trials for safe standing, which I know you've got bad experience, haven't you?
Well, look, it wouldn't be for me, but, I totally respect anybody who wants to do it, and it seems to be very, very popular with a lot of people.
I think it's important. I think safe standing is important. Away fans, if you ever go, I say stand, if you ever go and watch your team away, everybody stands. There's no question everybody stands. Now, we know the reason that it was all-seater stadium going back to Hillsborough and eventually in '94, all stadia had to be all-seated. So now it's realised that actually there is such a thing as safe standing with barriers in front. Spurs have done it. There's different clubs that have done it as well. It's been successful and it works. And also, if you're sitting sometimes in anywhere in the stand, it doesn't matter what club you go to, there's going to be a lot of people that are up and down. You often have actually where you sit down, then people can stand safely and they can stand where they are and enjoy the football, and everybody has the choice, and it is a safe way to watch football.
Always a carnival atmosphere at cricket. Quick word about England against India.
It's just a fantastic game. It really is. And England needed a target of 378, which is a record run chase. They are so close, 259 for 3, need 119 wins, 19 runs to win. We've got the best batsman in the world in Joe Root, the most informed batsman in the world in Johnny Bairstow. They're at the crease together, and they're calling it Bazball. Brendan McCullum, it's looking fantastic. So all good.
Can we just do a little shout-out?
Yeah.
It's Bring Your Son to Work Day, isn't it?
It is Bring Your Son to Work Day.
And who's waiting in the wings today?
I have my boy Joe with me today.
How old's Joe?
Joe is 14.
Well, a big hello to Joe. He's in the studio with us.
Can we see Joe?
Come on, Joe.
Come and have a little wave.
Come to work with your dad day And I think the thing he was most embarrassed more than anything else is when we put the makeup on and he's got, Dan, you're kind of freaking me out looking like that. So that's the main thing.
He does look like your dad. There's no denying him.
You think so?
I think
He's
so.
a good-looking lad, and I tell you what, Joe, you lucked out when you got your dad in, Paul. He's a cracking fella.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
OK, well, that's it. We've got to say goodbye to you now. We said hello, we say goodbye to you now, because we're going through the newspapers after this short break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back with the time at 7:37. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. The Home Secretary has called on police to use tougher powers such as imprisonment to stop fuel protesters causing havoc on motorways. Several arrests were made on Monday as campaigners calling for a cut in fuel duty targeted the M4 and stretches of the M5 during the morning rush hour.
A Downing Street spokesperson has said that Boris Johnson was aware of claims involving MP Chris Pincher when he was made Deputy Chief Whip. Full stop. Ministers previously claimed Mr Johnson hadn't been aware of specific allegations against Mr Pincher.
And as we were just discussing, crowds are expected to flock to Wimbledon today to watch Brit Cameron Norrie in his quarter-final match. As our last singles player still standing, hopes are high for the 26-year-old. He's playing Belgium's David Goffin on centre court later today.
We're going through the papers today in the company of the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, that's Martin Dobney, and political consultant Emma Burnell. Very good to see both of you.
Morning.
Very good. Emma, we're beginning with you and Lord Winston, who we just interviewed an hour ago on the programme. And this was an incident he had. His wife took ill and she subsequently died. He phoned 999. What was his experience like?
Unfortunately, it was not a good experience, and he's made the point that these calls can be heard not just by the person panicking whose loved one is in significant distress, but also by that distressed loved one. Lord Winston happens to be an incredibly well-respected doctor, so absolutely knows how to deal with somebody, and was in fact interrupted in giving his wife a cardiac massage by a litany of questions from the call handler. It's not this individual call handler's fault, but it seems that there was a very poor training. He was not trained to ask the right questions, not trained to minimise those questions, and not trained to do the kind of things that are needed. And it feels to me like a symptom of a much broader problem with people on the front line being expected to do all sorts of very, very difficult jobs. I wouldn't want to be a 999 call handler. And in no way am I saying that this individual was at all to blame, but not being given the proper tools, whether that's physical tools or training, to do the jobs that we need them to be able to do.
Terribly sad, and as you say, tragic, because he did lose his wife in all of this. And yeah, we wish him all the best. And as I say, he's just been on our programme this morning. Really interesting with his views on Roe versus Wade as well. Martin, you want to talk about woke education. This is inside The Sun today, page 4. And this is something Nadeem Zahawi has decided to tackle.
Yeah, so the Education Secretary yesterday spoke out in Commons. This is a huge victory for common sense, because a great many parents are rightly concerned about what their children as young as 4 are being taught in classrooms around gender ideology, over-sexualised education in the curriculum. This is something we made a documentary about, the Reclaim Party, called Groomed. That went out last week, and I think maybe Nadeem Zahawi has watched it, because we precisely call for this. The right for parents to know what their children are being taught should be fundamental and a human right. Instead, schools are often very resistant to let out what they're being told. And the fact of the matter is, activists have invaded our classrooms. Corporations like Stonewall and others are actively lobbying curriculums to be changed, to be more trans-leaning, and they're doing that with taxpayers' money. We're hearing stories of 13-year-olds transitioning without their parents' knowledge, having been encouraged into this via their school.
How do they get to do this? Do they do this under the radar of the Department of Education?
So the way it can work, Eamonn, is that, for example, in Brighton employed an external charity called All Sorts to advise it on its trans inclusion toolkit, which got around the Central Department of Education's policy. So in a sense, they have a breakaway curriculum which is being looked at as a nationwide rollout, and parents have every right to know what their children are being taught. We're seeing huge amounts of children identifying as non-binary. It seems to be something that is catching. It's a mindset that's fashionable and carries on. But when it goes to the point where we are prescribing drugs, hormones to change puberty, or even going down the route of surgery, it's time for a full, transparent investigation. I think this is a great move. And also, while they're at it yesterday, Kemi Badenoch, the Equalities Minister, said we need to make sure we have different gendered toilets, particularly in schools, but not at the expense of women's toilets. We must keep women safe.
I wonder, though, as a parent, I think we've got at least one child around the same age, roughly. Have you got a primary school age kid still?
Yeah, I have.
I mean, have you noticed that there is a reluctance from parents to ever speak out against some of these things?
Yes.
Whether it's on race and they might now be told what their children are being taught, but whether or not they'll do anything about it, I wonder whether parents will have the desire to go against sort of what they perceive to be public opinion.
Well, you are right. People are terrified of being called transphobic or racist. These are the original sins. There is a High Court review at the moment in Wales where a parent has taken the Welsh Government to court demanding that sex education is not made compulsory down to age 4. They're teaching graphic content to children as young as 4. It must stop. And this is about parent power. It's keeping children safe, and it's not exposing them to a dangerous, toxic mindset.
Okay.
Interesting.
Anything you'd like to add there, Emma?
I mean, I think this is more of a minefield than it might feel like at times. I think there are real issues with some of the ideological teaching. Whether you agree or disagree with it, it should be taught as this is what some people think, this is what other people think. On the other hand, I grew up in an era where there was real controversies about teaching basic biology. I think basic biology is really, really important. I think young children should know how children are made.
But at what age?
Well, I think there are ways that you can do this. I mean, I had a book before I went to school called How Babies Are Made. It was perfectly age appropriate. It didn't encourage me to have sex. It encouraged me to understand how my body worked. And actually, a lot of children's charities will say understanding biology is actually part of the first part of safeguarding. So what I worry about is throwing out the baby with the bathwater, if you'll forgive the terrible pun, and making sure that we are educating children in a way that is ideologically neutral And that doesn't mean being anti-trans or pro-trans or anti-feminist or pro-feminist. It means simply saying there are some things that are ideas that are contested and there are some things that are facts that are not.
No.
And it's really important, for example, that we don't go down the idea of say, for example, evangelical parents being able to take their children out of schools because they believe in creationism, because that's ideology rather than fact.
Well, I went to all-boys schools, right? And when I was 14, we got this very fancy pack for our science.
14?
14.
Did you know nothing about the birds and the bees before then?
Just about 10.
All right, here we go.
With the Nuffield science pack, right, which was very good. It came in a plastic Perspex cover, and there were like 6 modules inside it. It wasn't like a book. It was amazing, incredible. But anyway, so then what happened is that the school came around when we were supplied in the office with our Nuffield science packs. Section 3 was on biology. And Section 3 had to be taken out. We took out Section 3 because there was a picture of a naked man and a naked woman in it, and that was going to pervert us. So
really?
It had
when
to be...
did you get taught sex ed? Because I was 8.
I've never been taught sex. I don't know anything about it.
The 4 children.
When I find out what's causing those, or what has caused those, do something about it. Right, the House of Lords. This is in the Guardian, page 7. Labour wants to replace the Lords with what's termed a Senate of the Nations.
This was a part of a speech given by Anna Sarwar, who is the Scottish Labour leader, to the Fabian Society yesterday. Full disclosure, I do some work with the Fabians. And he announced an idea that instead of the unelected House of Lords, there'd be a more representative elected Senate of the Nations that has a similar sort of role as the House of Lords, but is much more representative of the people of the country. And I think it's a really, really interesting idea. Obviously, we have been discussing changing that constitutional arrangement since I've been in politics, which is a really blooming long time. But I'd really like to see some actual advance made. What tends to happen is that this falls apart because we have 17 different ideas and 15 different people arguing over them.
Well, also there's a lot of money involved as well.
There's a lot of money involved. There's vested interests, and the status quo wins because while we all decide that we want change, we can't decide what change looks like.
Much like the NHS, many would argue. One of those things that we all agree probably needs major reform, but nobody quite brave enough to tackle it head on. I think we're going to have to leave it there because, in fact, we're joined by the Shadow Home Attorney General, in fact, I was going to say Home Secretary, Emily Thornberry. Very good morning to you. I don't know if you heard any of that discussion. I know you want to talk about fraud, but I'd be interested to get your views on the Senate of the Nations proposed as an alternative to the Lords, if you are interested in sharing them.
Well, I think we all agree that there should be change. The difficulty is exactly what change there should be. But there are a whole lot of institutions that do need to be reformed, and we're not afraid to look at those things honestly and be radical about it. We need to have some change to a number of our institutions in order to make sure that they are closer to the people and doing the best for our economy.
Shadow Attorney General, fraud is what you're here to talk about today. It's out of control, isn't it?
It's completely out of control. Kwasi Kwarteng may say that it isn't a crime that people know about in their day-to-day lives. He's completely wrong. During the pandemic, in the statistics that the last lot of statistics that we have, which goes up to September 21, there was, I think, 1 million allegations of fraud that was called into Action Fraud. Action Fraud is this organisation. Action seems to be a bit of a misnomer because only 1.2% of those allegations actually led to any sort of charge, and then they're supposed to send it off to the local police forces, and again, you know, the number of times that they've been sending them off to the police has halved. So, and then in turn the police are not properly investigating and they're not being charged. It boils down to this, doesn't it? That crime seems to be increasing, the number of charges seems to be going down, and it's taking longer and longer for anything to get to court.
But could also boil down to we don't understand cyber fraud. We're not equipped to tackle with it. We're not funded. The institutions and legislation within Parliament isn't up to the minute on this sort of thing. We've a lot to learn, haven't we?
Oh, no, I agree with you. And I also know that the government just simply isn't focused on the issue. You know, I asked them a question, Eamonn, I said to them, how much of this fraud, you know, that consumers are facing comes from the UK and how much of it comes from abroad? And they couldn't even tell me that. If they can't even tell us what the nature of the crime is, then how on earth are we ever going to tackle it? It seems to me that it is difficult, and there are lots of different agencies that deal with it, but what we need to do is we need to get them together and we need to have real focus on it and know that we can make a difference, because otherwise we cannot get in front of this, and it is the biggest crime that affects the most number of people. You know, it affects all of us, you know, and it's embarrassing sometimes. I mean, I remember I got a text message which I responded to, and it was fraudulent. I was embarrassed. I was able to defend myself against it, but, you know, the elderly, the people who, the young, those who don't quite follow the system can get defrauded of large amounts of money that they ill afford to be able to lose. And there doesn't seem to be any redress. There doesn't seem to be anybody out there who's on their side, anybody out there who's prepared to prosecute it, find these people, track them down and stop it.
Yeah, and it's so clever, it's so devious, the methods that they take. I mean, on the subject of fraud, Keir Starmer says...
I mean, that's the trouble. It's varied as well.
Right. Well, I've said on the subject of fraud, Keir Starmer is saying he's going to make Brexit work. The Labour Party is going to make Brexit work. Is he a fraud?
No, he's absolutely genuine. The point is this, isn't it, is that, you know, many of us in the Labour Party campaigned to remain in the European Union, and we lost the referendum. There was then campaigns during the two general elections, 2017 and 2019. 2019 in particular, which was about Brexit. It was a single issue general election. We lost it. We lost it. So now what we have to do is we have to accept the reality. It's a one-way street. We have gone. And the fact of the matter is, Eamonn, is that we will not be able to rejoin the European Union on the same terms as we were members before. It is simply impossible. So what we should be doing is making the best of the situation, and we should be moving on and looking forward and being optimistic, but being prepared to face the problems that we have as a nation, face the problems that we have with our nearest neighbours, and make sure that we sort it out. Not just be afraid, as the government are. They spend their time running away from it, going, oh, don't criticise us, you're being unpatriotic. Well, excuse me, but the deal that you signed on Christmas Eve has all sorts of holes in it. You need to make sure that they are repaired for the sake of the country.
Yeah, look, you say it's about being positive about it all now and that you accept that. I mean, obviously, Sir Keir Starmer voted 48 times against Brexit. You yourself, an ardent Remainer. And yes, you say you've changed your tune now, but it wasn't exactly dripping in enthusiasm during that speech last night. It looked like reluctant resignation. It's all very easy to say we'll fix the Northern Ireland Protocol, but it looks a lot like he's talking about dynamic alignment in his resolution to all of that, which just opens up EU directives getting involved in the protocol.
No, it isn't. No, so what we've talked about, for example, and the thing that would make a real difference to goods that are, you know, today having problems moving across from Dover into the rest of Europe, or from the mainland to Northern Ireland, or from Northern Ireland into the south of Ireland, is a veterinary agreement. And a veterinary agreement is simply this. It's simply accepting that our food standards are the same, if not better, than the rest of Europe. Now, if we could just get an agreement on that, then we wouldn't have all of this red tape when it comes to the export of our food. You know, I mean, New Zealand can get a veterinary agreement with the EU. Why can't we? And you ask the government why, and they come up with a whole load of nonsense, you know, but the truth is this is red tape that comes because they have a bad Brexit deal. It has a number of holes in it, and they ought to sort this out.
On this, and I quote Sadiq Khan, who spoke just minutes around the time of Sir Keir Starmer's speech last night. We are only just beginning to understand the damage Brexit is doing, so nothing is off the table in the fight to tackle the cost of living crisis. He's not alone in those views within your party, Stella Creasy, to name just one other.
Look, I'm not saying that things can be perfect for business, but what I'm saying is that they can be a darn sight better. If we had a government that was prepared to face up to the problems that we have and the number of issues that we get as a result of leaving the European Union, and make sure that we do it, you know, that we do the right thing. But at the moment, we have a government that is not prepared to even look at it. It doesn't seem to have the bandwidth to be able to sort this out. As far as Boris Johnson's concerned, Brexit's done, that's the end of it. And yet, look at the issues that we have. Look at the problems that we have. We are a service economy. What does the Brexit deal say about services? Nothing. You know, there are a number of issues that we could do. So what about getting professionals in the UK's qualifications recognised in the rest of Europe? Why haven't we got that as part of the deal? Because they didn't have time to do it, because they were fighting. What they need to do is stop fighting, be a bit more grown up, and sit down with the European Union and get some of these things sorted out. That's all we're saying. We're just saying, let's look to the future, let's be optimistic, let's not be afraid. These things can be sorted, just got to do it.
What is your future as a party, with or without Keir Starmer?
Our future as a party, I certainly hope, is to be the next government and for Keir Starmer to be the next Prime Minister. And what we want is we want to have a government that is thoughtful, that has some vision, that is strong, that doesn't spend its time trying to divide our country, that shows that there's an alternative. We don't have to have this terrible lot in charge anymore. There is an alternative, and we ask for the permission from the people to serve them.
Let me ask you, if you were in charge, if you were Home Secretary now, I mean, you want to crack down on all these parasites stealing money from our bank accounts, right? And rightly so, absolutely rightly so. Where would you stand when it comes to the fuel protesters at the moment? The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, she's saying she wants the police and crime bill used. She wants the police to use new powers to stop these fuel protesters bringing the roads to a halt around the country. Yet many people might see these protesters as sort of Robin Hoods, as doing the job for them, as doing the job that the government isn't doing, because they feel that we as a country are being ripped off by the oil companies. What would you do if you were Priti Patel?
Yeah. So I think there's a number of things that should be done. So I think the first thing is that we should recognise that people do have the right to protest, but they don't have the right to close down roads ad nauseum. You know, so we need to get the balance right on that. I think that's right. And so whilst it's right that people should have the opportunity to be able to express their views, as I say, we also need to bear in mind that on those roads there will be ambulances, there will be lorries taking food to shops and so forth. You know, we need to make sure the arteries of our country do remain in a healthy place. So that's a kind of a balance thing. But you know what we should also be doing as a government, if we were in government, we would actually be looking at what do we do about the fact that these prices are so high. So, you know, we heard recently from the Chancellor he was going to cut VAT, but he never had, as far as we can see, an agreement with these petrol companies saying that they would actually pass on that cut to the consumers. There was no agreement in advance, so the petrol companies go, oh, thank you very much, pocket that, you know, and keep the prices the same as they are before. We need to make sure that we don't have this kind of racketeering from petrol companies, but we also need to have some sort of vision when it comes to making sure that we're not dependent on fossil fuels, in which that we need to rely on all sorts of regimes around the world to be able to send into our country. We need to be self-reliant, and in order to be self-reliant, we need to look at the new forms of power that are available, you know, to us as a country. We need to make sure that we're subsidising people in low and middle incomes to be able to move on to electric vehicles. We need to make sure that we have power points up and down the country so people can charge their electric vehicles. We need to have a bit of vision. But what do we get from this government? We get nothing but scandal after scandal, lie after lie. They don't have time, you know, or the bandwidth to be able to deal with any of these issues. They are exhausted, they have no ideas, and frankly, they're letting the country down, and we are stuck as a nation.
OK, Emily Thornberry, what can we expect from Sir Keir Starmer if he is fined by Durham Police? Will he be appealing that decision, and will we be told if he is fined and he does appeal that decision? What do the next few days look like? Because there's lots of speculation that either he has been fined already and that is happening, or that he will be fined imminently. Can you give us an insight on what the exact steps will be?
Yeah, so Keir spoke about this yesterday, and what a contrast with Boris Johnson, huh? So Keir said that if the police fine me, I will resign. That's what he said. We have not heard from Durham Police.
He won't appeal,
and that's the end of it, really. But just compare it with the... So all I can tell you is that what Keir has said. If he gets a fine from Durham Police, he will resign. But he's not going to get a fine from Durham Police.
So he might
because he hasn't done anything wrong. Unlike number 10, that was like party central during the pandemic, Keir Starmer did nothing wrong, and he will not get fined. It will not be an issue.
But just yes or no, will he appeal it if he's fined?
As far as I'm aware, he's not going to appeal it if he gets fined, but he's not going to get fined. I mean, where do you want me to go with this? He's not going to get fined. That's going to be the end of it. He hasn't done anything wrong.
Shadow Attorney General, we really appreciate your thoughts. Emily Thornberry, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Emily. Lovely talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
No problem.
There we go. No problem. 1 minute. No, it's 8 o'clock exactly. Let's go to the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Priti Patel urges police to arrest fuel protesters as they bring motorways to a standstill.
A very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 8 on Tuesday, the 5th of July. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news in this hour, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has urged the police to arrest and charge fuel campaigners that block motorways amid warnings that the protests could continue through the summer.
The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is facing a party revolt over Brexit after he vowed in a speech not to take Britain back into the single market. It comes as he prepares to learn this week if he will be fined over Beergate.
Police in Chicago have arrested a 22-year-old man in connection with the mass shooting that took place during a 4th of July parade. The incident killed 6 and injured 30 others.
And 1 person has died and 3 others have been taken to hospital after a major gas explosion at a block of flats in Bedford yesterday. Police say further bodies could be found in the coming days as they search the rubble.
Thanks very much indeed for joining in our debates, and we know Emily Thornberry will have got a lot of you wanting to get in touch. Let me give you the email. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk. The Twitter account is @gbnews, OK? Do that.
Oh, yeah, and I was just going to do an appeal for a people's champion. We want to bring some positivity because the news, quite frankly, can be quite depressing sometimes. So if you know somebody in your community, somebody in your family who you think goes above and beyond and deserves a special shout-out, we really want to celebrate
them. If my kids are watching this, please don't be embarrassing me. Don't be embarrassing me what we're all about.
Although you're very nice, Dad. Anyway, email us with the subject title Breakfast People's Champion and we'll do the rest.
Political commentator Alice Denby joins me now. Alice is the deputy editor of CapEx. So much to talk about, so much to get opinions on. Emily Thornberry being one of them, who we were just speaking to before the break there. And it's all about Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer comes out yesterday, addresses this European gathering, and he says, oh, don't worry about us. We'll get on with making Brexit work. Now, I tell you, Emily was talking about how the Conservative Party is infighting and they didn't get Brexit done properly, she says, because of all the infighting. I think it's going to be a heck of a week for Labour, depending on what happens to Mr Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I do think Keir Starmer slightly strains credibility on Brexit, given that he was the architect of Labour's disastrous Brexit strategy. He wanted to have a second referendum. He hinted that he would, in fact, campaign to overturn the result of the original referendum. So I suppose for supporters of Brexit, it's nice to see that he's come into the fold. But, I mean, do we really believe him on this? And as for the kind of nitty-gritty...
Do you believe him?
I do. I mean, I think that this shows what a kind of cynical and calculating politician he actually is. I think it's pretty clear that he thinks we'd be better off if we'd have never left, but he now thinks that that's not going to be a vote-winning strategy anymore.
So if it gets him in power, he'll say whatever you want him to say.
I mean, classic politician.
Sadiq Khan, though, I mean, a lot of people saying he's on manoeuvres because he's come out and said we should rejoin the single market, the customs union, although not fully return to the EU.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair enough for the Mayor of London to say that. He's got a very different kind of electorate, and clearly with London's kind of strength in services and so on, it would be better for Londoners to stay in the single market. Perhaps Sadiq Khan does have an eye to what might happen with this Beergate investigation. I have to say, I think it would be quite funny if Keir Starmer ended up being the only person to resign over breaking COVID rules when we know everyone was at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Emily Thornberry said, he says constantly, I'm not going to be fined. I actually don't like that assertion that they're so confident.
We can't presume to know what the police are
unless
going to do.
Unless they do know.
Well, there's questions about that. Do you think he will appeal it? I mean, we're trying to get... It was very slippery
But he said, Emily Thornberry was very straight there, he is not going to be fined, she said.
I mean, that's very confident. I mean, come on, the guy was drinking a beer. It's really not the worst thing that anyone's ever done.
Rishi Sunak got a fine for standing near a cake.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think it would be a kind of amusing outcome. And God knows what would happen to Labour in that situation.
Yeah. So you don't think Labour is a transformed party? I mean, if you go back to the Tony Blair tactics, he knew he had to move beyond Labour's core voters. He knew he had to bring in a wider audience. Starmer actually is applying the same tactics. He knows he's got to appeal to a wider audience, and the only way he can do that is to support Brexit.
I actually think that Brexit's not going to be a deciding issue at the next election in the way it was in 2019. I think the fact that he feels confident to say that Labour wouldn't rejoin the single market shows to the degree to which the issue's actually fairly settled in public opinion. It's really not something that really divides people and gets them worked up in the way it did in the Corbyn era.
But let's talk about people getting worked up. A lot of them work in Parliament and they get very worked up, and they to the point where they start fiddling with people and they start. She's wondering where I was going.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought we were going to protests or where we're going. Yeah, so
no,
pinching.
But you know, I mean, it seems to be a pressure pot. What are those called? What are those cookers called? Pressure cooker. Pressure cooker. It's a pressure cooker, isn't it?
It's a pressure cooker for molestation.
Yes, and for molestation and goodness knows what. What the heck is it? I tell you, drink's got to play a part.
I do think it's an unusual workplace.
Yeah.
You know, the long hours, the late nights, people are away from their families, drink plays a part.
I think that's an easy excuse.
Well, yeah, and I think it also is the kind of job that attracts a certain kind of person, a kind of person who's very interested in power. But I would caveat that by saying that there are many other workplaces where this kind of thing goes on. And the fact is, politicians are more accountable than people who work in other industries like journalism or like banking or any kind of job where there's huge imbalances of power.
Can we talk about the protests? Priti Patel saying she's going to use these new police powers to potentially send people who are upset with the price of fuel at the moment to jail for 6 months.
I think it's very understandable that people are extremely frustrated with these protests. Drivers have it bad enough already, £100 to fill up your
Not
car.
according to our inbox this morning, everybody seems to be supportive of these protests.
Yes,
outraged that the fuel hasn't been dealt with by the government properly.
So these people are seen as heroes?
Yeah, they're saying, look, it's not like the eco-warriors and Extinction Rebellion. It's totally different.
Yeah, I do think that it's certainly a more sympathetic cause, and there is things that the government could do. It's obviously never a good idea to sort of give in to people who are causing civil disruption, but the government, 40% of the price of fuel is VAT and duty.
I definitely get what the folk are doing, and they're doing it for people who feel they just don't have a voice. Whether I would feel the same understanding if I was stuck behind them on the M4 or the M5, that's a whole other thing.
Well, and, it's not just drivers trying to get to work, it's ambulances, it's people delivering food.
Trying to get off on your holidays.
Trying to get your kids to school. I don't really support this kind of direct action. I think it's ultimately counterproductive. I think you lose sympathy.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are you getting there? What are you getting there? People are saying, Mark says, I totally agree with you, Eamonn. Look, there's somebody else that agrees with me. Does nobody ever agree with you? I totally agree with you again, Eamonn. I get stuck behind loads of stupid people everywhere. We're talking about airports, but he says he does them at banks, supermarkets, and they make an easy job hard. Well, I'm for you there, Mark. We're talking about motorways now.
Duncan says fuel duty needs to be scrapped altogether. They can have the VAT, but the additional paper mile needs to go. Stephen in Lancashire says, in principle, I accept the right to protests by citizens. I have a problem with some style of protests because they disproportionately harm citizens.
Yeah.
My wife is a care worker, writes Brian. She needs fuel for her job. At the end of the week, she's out of pocket. The firm she works for does give her a fuel allowance, but it's not enough to keep her going. So he's clearly supportive of the protest.
Oh, this is brilliant. This is from Leicester. Not from Leicester, the city. This is Leicester, as in Leicester Piggott, but it's not him either. Lester, right? So it's... Go, Eamonn. I completely agree with your frustration with people at airports. Same as people, and he's absolutely right here, same as people that get to a toll booth on the M6 and start looking, how am I going to pay this?
Oh, I've got a story.
I've got a story too. It's not as if it's not been signposted.
I know, but what if you're already at the signpost and you realise you don't have a means of paying? What are you supposed to do? Do a U-turn on the M5 toll bridge?
That's for coins or that's for cash, that's for cards.
This is before you could pay with cards. I got myself in trouble at the M5 toll booth trying to get into Wales.
My wife was having a furious row with me in the car one day, and the children.
How unlike you two.
How unlike us. She was having a few, and she was being critical of me, and she, of course, she hates being in the car that she doesn't drive, whatever she's driving it. And we get to the M6 toll booth, whatever it is, and she gets to a place where she hadn't got a card or whatever it was, but the attendant was brilliant. He wound up, he said, "Are you stupid?" He said, "What a..." And I started bursting out laughing. He was brilliant.
Should have leapt to her defence.
He was so rude. He was brilliant. He was just brilliant. He must face idiots all day.
How Ruth copes with you.
And then she couldn't reverse out because there were cars behind her.
Well, exactly. So what did they do? They let her through?
He just laughed. No, but he had to. I got out and I soothed the ways. And I said, "Look, what do you need? What do you need to get out here? Whatever it is." And then I gave my card. And off we went, and we went.
You saved the day.
Again.
What a hero.
Again, I saved the day.
Ruth, you're so long-suffering.
Because also I read signs in advance and understand them.
Perhaps you could have provided the wherewithal and the means.
I was enjoying it too much.
Yeah.
I was enjoying it too much.
We've got to say thank you to
really
Alice Denby, Deputy Editor of CapEx. I'm sure we'll see you again very soon.
Thanks, Alice.
We're going to turn our attention now to another really serious issue. It's the second week in a row we've been talking about a major gas explosion. This time, at least one person died. 3 others are known to have been injured. This was in a flat in Bedford.
Now, the Fire and Rescue Service there described this blast as a major incident, and it follows another gas explosion. You may remember we reported this from Birmingham last week. Question is, should we be concerned about the frequency of these sort of things? What can you do to protect yourself? Let's now speak to Malcolm Grimston. Malcolm is a Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Energy Policy. It seems as if these explosions are frequent, Malcolm. Are they?
It's worth keeping this in perspective. We've seen around a dozen deaths from gas explosions over the last 5 years, which is about the same as a day's death toll on the roads. Clearly, it's an issue that needs to be taken seriously, but I don't think anybody should feel very scared about their homes at the moment. And they are caused by a whole variety of different issues. Some of them are bottled gas in the home that people aren't keeping safe as perhaps they should and getting checked out regularly.
You see your microphone, sorry, if you see what's on your lapel there, could you just unplug it and push it up your lapel really high up? Good lad, that's it. Thank you. Sorry for that.
Sorry, no problem. Actually, I might just hold it.
Yeah, just hold
Oh, no,
it.
I'll re-clip it on. You carry on talking, chaps, and I'll sort this out.
But the one thing that is of concern is the steel and iron pipes, many of which go back to the Second World War.
Yeah.
They can corrode.
Yeah.
That can leak gas into the soil. That can then seep up into the house, and almost when you can actually smell the gas, it can sometimes be too late. And I think that's infrastructure. I mean, we've just been talking about energy prices, and it's going to be a major theme for at least the rest of this year, if not for a lot longer. And yet, at the same time, we need to spend a lot of money on the infrastructure that you don't see a positive feedback from. It keeps it safe, but the pipes still are underground. You don't see the amount of the benefit of the money. But we've got to do it, and that's not just here. It's water pipes, it's electricity wires.
And you keep saying we have got to do it. The private utility companies have got to do it. So are they spending money on this?
Well, then you have an issue that we have an approach at the moment which says to these companies, if you make a profit, we'll take it off you in a windfall tax. And that's bound ultimately to affect the amount of money that they're prepared to spend on infrastructure. Now, the pipe work is not actually competitive because there's only one set of gas pipes. It doesn't make sense to have competing gas pipes because they're so expensive to put in. So you can do it through regulation and through the government office, Ofgem, or the electricity markets and the equivalent off gas for gas. But the money does need to be raised somehow, and that money ultimately will come back onto either power bills or the taxpayer at a time when we're already massively hard-pressed in both of those areas, with taxes going up and power prices going up. There's no alternative to it, but it's not an easy political decision.
Yeah, and that's sort of the big picture. In terms of individuals, a lot of people live in multiple occupancy dwellings, don't they? Whether it's a block of flats, whatever it might be. They can't really be responsible for the other people in that building. Is there anything people can do to make sure that, you know, where they go to sleep at night is safe?
Well, get their own appliances checked. And again, at a time when people are facing, do I pay my power bill or pay my food bill, the extra expenditure of an annual check on these things. But that is one way of keeping yourself safe. Don't have a cannabis farm in your house if you can avoid it, because one of the causes of explosion has been this butane hash oil, which is associated with cannabis farms. And if you get the slightest whiff of gas, immediately ring British Gas Emergency Services.
Yeah. OK, good advice. Thank you so much. Malcolm Grimson, Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Energy Policy and Technology at Imperial. Always good to have you on the programme. Took a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. It's very good advice.
It is good advice.
I've told you before, get rid of that cannabis farm.
No, in all seriousness, I was about to message my husband in the advert break if I get a second to say, we need to get a gas check every year. Add it to the list of daily
But yours
things.
is a new house.
I know. Well, we nearly just bought another house, and during the survey there was a risk of gas, and they shut the whole house.
See, when Malcolm was talking
Scary.
about replacing the infrastructure and the pipes, I mean, I can remember outside our front door at home in Belfast, digging up the metal pipes, which were all rotted, and the stink into the soil and whatever it is with all of that. You know what I'm talking about, Malcolm. It's a pretty expensive business, obviously, for the utility companies, all of that. But what else are they going to spend their money on? 17 minutes past 8 o'clock. News-wise, here's what's happening.
A man's been arrested following a mass shooting at a 4th of July celebration parade in Chicago. 6 people were shot dead after a gunman opened fire with a high-powered rifle from a rooftop.
The NHS are going to trial using drones to send chemotherapy drugs to speed up deliveries of vital medicines with a short shelf life. It's hoped the scheme will pave the way for what are termed same-day delivery of medical supplies from anywhere in the country.
And the Duchess of Cornwall has commissioned her daughter-in-law, the Duchess of Cambridge, to take her picture for the cover of Country Life magazine. Kate, who's a keen amateur photographer, has taken the photographs to celebrate Camilla's 75th birthday later this month.
So let's hold the picture as we talk now to Royal Editor here, the Vanity Fair Royal Editor and the author, Katie Nichols, who joins us now. So, Katie, look, I love this woman, right? Personally, I really get on well with her. She's lovely.
She is.
I like her pastel blues. I like everything. But when you see it on the front of that Country Life magazine, it's a bit like a memorial card or something.
No,
it is.
Eamonn.
And she's shot in a graveyard. Put Country Life up there again, and then tell me, viewers, tell me that if I'm telling lies here. But,
lies and lies and more lies.
No, I think she looks... Listen, if I look like that when I'm 75, I'll be absolutely thrilled.
Fine. She's fine, but the photograph and the
you
framing...
don't like it?
No, I think it's all a bit Hammer House of Horrors, really, all of it.
Do you know what? I think it was quite deliberately structured like this. I'm a bit fed up of seeing these staged royal photographs and these sort of official portrait-style things, and I think it's quite refreshing to see something a little bit different, and I think to see her in the gardens of her home, and I think that's significant as well, because people probably wonder what the backdrop is.
What is the backdrop?
OK, so the backdrop is
cemetery.
It's Ray Mill House, which is her bolt hole, which I'm told she's going to keep even when she's queen. So this is where she goes to escape royal life and have a bit of a break.
And where is that?
It's in Wiltshire.
Near Laycock, isn't it?
That's right. And she bought it after her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles. And it was very much her space. It's where she spends her Christmases with her family. It's where she does her gardening. It's where she goes to escape, I think, the pressures of royal life. So I think it's quite significant that she asked to be photographed there.
Does Charles go there?
He does. They go for a second Christmas with Camilla's family, and I'm told Charles does the washing up when he goes there,
brilliant.
and he gets absolutely stuck in. So I think what you're seeing is not a memorial-style picture. I think you're seeing her at her most relaxed, about to do some gardening, and I think how lovely that she asked the Duchess of Cambridge to take this picture.
Are they close?
They're very, very close. They really are. I think it's interesting, isn't it? You know, we were sitting here talking about the Fab Four last time, and of course that was Harry and Meghan and William and Kate. Now I think we talk about a very different Fab Four, and we're talking about Charles and Camilla and William and Kate.
She wouldn't ask Meghan to take a picture then, would she?
Well, I don't think Meghan is an esteemed photographer, is she? So...
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you think the Duchess of Cambridge is an esteemed photographer? Do professional photographers rate her? Because there have been criticisms in the past that they're overexposed or the backgrounds are a bit... You know,
look, I'm not a professional photographer. I do love photography, and I look at that and think it is beautifully composed, right? It's sort of clear. The Duchess is clear. There's that clarity. The background is a little blurred. I have to say, I did speak to Alistair Morrison, who taught Kate photography.
Did he?
Yeah, and he said that she is now really, really rated. And I think, listen, I'm sure there will be people that pick her technical prowess apart, but actually what you cannot fault is the intimacy that she gets in those pictures, because I don't think anyone else would be able to get such a lovely natural shot.
They know her, and it's also relaxed.
And there's a lovely rapport between them.
So tell me this. So Charles and Camilla, they're tootling down the motorway to Wales. Say there was going to be a protest in front of them.
Good thinking, Eamonn.
Yes,
no, you did that.
I'm thinking.
Stuck on the M4.
Yeah, they're going to get stuck on the M4, are they, going into to Wales?
I think the motorcade will probably get them past if they need to. But they'll be going to Wales for Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. They've got a really packed diary, actually. I mean, today they'll be in Cardiff. They're starting off in Cardiff. I mean, they're doing 6 engagements. 6 engagements in one day. I think when you think about their ages and what they do, they are pretty remarkable.
But he asks for that, doesn't he, specifically, Charles?
I think he thrives off of it, and I think it keeps him up. He is the Prince of Wales, so that connection with Wales is really, really important. They have a lovely holiday home there, which is where they stay during what we call Wales. Don't ask me to pronounce it, because I just will get it wrong and I'll get lots of complaints. But it took him 10 years to find this place, and this is where they stay during Wales Week. And they have a very busy itinerary. I think it's a really important time for them to connect with the people of Wales. And, Charles has spent a lot of time there over the years. It's a very special place to him.
Why do they want so many homes for? I mean, how do they have time to stay in them?
Because they have to visit all parts of the United Kingdom. And this is privately purchased, privately funded. It is his holiday home.
I'm sure it is.
And, after this, we will see them get back to engagements, probably for a few more weeks here. And then, of course, they'll be going to Balmoral. And then that will be that. That will be their summer in Scotland before we resume with the autumn schedule. So it's been a very busy year for them. This is a fun week that they always enjoy because they do love Wales. But, when you think about it, 6 engagements. When they're starting off actually this morning, they'll be at the opening of the new BBC's new headquarters. They've got some that we can't talk about because they're embargo. But, they finish off with this big evening of music and drama celebrating Welsh culture at a diplomatic reception. But you think at 75, most people want to be putting their feet up.
100%.
These two are just, they're impressive. And I think the fact that the Queen bestowed that Order of the Garter on the Duchess of Cornwall just a couple of weeks ago really tells you everything. She appreciates what the Duchess of Cornwall is doing. We're going to, I think, probably read a really intimate interview. She's guest edited that issue of Country Life, but she's also sat down for one of, we're told, her most candid interviews ever. I think it'll be very interesting.
Is this Charles and Camilla in every way but name acting out being king and queen? Is this now what people say?
I think it is, and I think they're really thinking about the images that they're projecting and the personalities that they're projecting. I don't think they want too staid and too formal. I think what we've seen ever since the pandemic and in photo shoots like this is just a little bit more of the real people. And when you think about it, those candid shots of them that we see on Instagram are actually the ones that make them the most popular. People like that. I think that's why we're seeing this move away from this sort of rather formal. She had her choice of any photographer she wanted. She chose her daughter-in-law and she chose a really candid snap.
And when is her birthday later this month?
It's later this month, and I think there will be a big celebration. I think, so, you know,
I'll probably get an invite to
You
that.
probably will,
I probably will.
You need a +1.
Well, just tell her you liked the picture.
I will. No, I'm very good
Too
at
late
lying.
now.
I'm very good. I can bluff that. I like her outfit. I like her hair.
I love the magazine. I love
It's fine. It's just I'm not too sure the two big tombstones behind her. That's all.
Columns.
Bit foreboding. You know, that looks like a memorial card, as I say. Look, anyway, but the flowers are nice. She's a lovely woman. She's a lovely woman.
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Katie. Always good talking to you, getting the inside view on that.
Coming up, I dare risk provoking another rant from you. We're going to be talking about chronic pain, struggles with back pain.
You're opinionated, I rant. Because I'm riddled with pain as well.
Yeah, he's going to
riddled.
Anyway, we're talking about Adele's back pain, but we'll probably talk a bit about Eamonn's as well.
At least I only have a pain in my back.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Right, back after this.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A fine day to come for many, but there will be a few showers around. There will be a lot of cloud around, and there will be further rain in the north later, more especially overnight and into tomorrow. At the moment, high pressure's trying to build in from the west. It will have more success later in the week, but for the time being, weather fronts are still toppling around the top of that high to bring some weather into northern parts of the country. That's what we saw yesterday, and we'll see further showers here and there, mainly northwest England, North Wales, Northern Ireland and parts of northern Scotland through the day. But actually some decent sunny spells coming through for Scotland, for northern England. I think for Northern Ireland, for parts of Wales and the south, a lot of cloud remains, and as a result, temperatures not far from average, perhaps a little below in some spots, 22 Celsius for London, 19 for Glasgow, 18 for Belfast, for example. But it's for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland where the cloud thickens later, and by the evening, spells of rain move in. Those outbreaks of rain crossing Scotland into Northern England, North Wales, North Midlands and Northern Ireland overnight. Mostly it's on and off, but for Western Scotland it's persistent and it will build up over the hills. But with the cloud arriving from the northwest overnight and with milder air arriving as well, well, it's not going to be as cool as we start off tomorrow. Temperatures in the mid-teens in many spots. And in the south, well, the rain doesn't reach here. In fact, it's expected to stay dry through the week across southern parts of England and Wales. Some sunshine coming through as well, a sunnier day compared to today, whilst it is also warmer, 22 to 24 Celsius. Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, though, cloud and outbreaks of rain, again most persistent over the hills of western Scotland where it will be cool and blustery. Thursday and Friday more widely settled, I think, and warming up, particularly in the south with highs of 27 by Friday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Still to come, looking ahead the next half hour in the programme, autism. Now, apparently, it is less likely to be diagnosed in, well, I heard it was in females than males, but that's not what it's telling me here this morning. Anyway, we're going to meet a woman who was diagnosed with ADHD and autism at the age of 48.
Yeah, a lot of people get late diagnosis in that generation. Coming up in the next hour, we'll also have a, wait for it, a water sommelier. Do you know what that is? Yeah, you know what a sommelier is?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, there's somewhere you go and you get your wine and they tell you all the good ones.
Experts.
Turns out you can get different types of water, so we'll be delving into that. Is tap water any good anymore? And apparently it could all be running out in London, not to scare you. We'll be talking about that just after 9 o'clock.
Okay. You know what to do. Get in touch. There's the email address, and you can tweet as well and whatever, and it's always lovely to hear you.
Now, lots of people were lucky enough.
Have I ever told any of you about my back pain? Have I told any of you about my slip discs? Have I ever told you about my slip disc?
Just a few times.
Well, apparently they're all cashing in on it now. Who's the latest?
Adele. Lots of people were seeing Adele in concert last week and over the weekend, and she did a few sort of... She chats a lot, doesn't she, during her performances?
And she walks around going, oh...
My back!
Yeah.
Anyway, she told all of her adoring fans over the weekend that she actually slipped a disc when she was 15, and she struggled with the pain ever since, and to be honest, it's a common problem.
Have I ever told you about it with me? How many?
If I had £1 for every time I heard about your chronic pain, I don't actually mean that. I actually do feel sorry for you. I do. You're just so desperate to have some pity and some... 1 in 6 suffer from chronic pain. Eamonn definitely is one of those. So what can be done to help? Well, here with some tips on how to handle the discomfort is Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence. Help me out
Dr.
here.
Frankie, can I tell you something?
Even I've heard about your chronic pain.
I know, but sitting hurts. Sitting. So should I be standing talking to you?
Probably.
So back pain's really common. Slip disc actually isn't one of the most common forms of back pain. Most people have kind of a muscular strain in the lower back. But the really important thing is that sitting does make it worse. And lots of people who have jobs like yourself where you're sitting for long periods of the day, or people who are lorry drivers, actually can really suffer from chronic back pain. The key with this is movement, which is not something that many people like to hear, especially if you're in pain.
But if it hurts, you can't move.
So a really important message is that hurt doesn't always equal harm. So actually, sometimes a little bit of movement might feel a bit uncomfortable and painful, but taking some analgesia, so some painkillers, particularly ones that have an anti-inflammatory property like ibuprofen, can help you get through that little bit of discomfort and pain.
But then you get constipated.
So you actually can get constipated from opioid analgesias, things like codeine.
Yeah.
If you speak to your pharmacist, things like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen or naproxen are probably more suitable for chronic back pain than opioid ones.
But it's interesting, with your whole experience, you've just realised how many people are living with chronic pain, haven't you? Because you sort of tapped into this sort of middle-of-the-night brigade, everybody awake.
On social media, or when I was at the Silverstone Grand Prix on Sunday.
Oh, really?
This man came up and told me about his constipation problems.
Sorry.
Which is, well, you may find it funny.
No, it's just, I wasn't expecting that.
But it is true. These are the real problems people don't talk about.
No, you're right.
I think it's a much bigger issue than people realise. I think there's lots of kind of components of chronic pain. There's the actual pain itself, there's the disability. Chronic back pain is one of the biggest forms of causes of disability in the UK. About 11% of cases are due to chronic back pain. There's also the mental impact, so the frustration of not being able to do the things you want to do. If people are staying home from work, the isolation, and it can all lead to low mood, and you end up in this vicious cycle. So I think it's important that we do have these conversations, because it isn't just as simple as taking a painkiller.
And people are embarrassed by it. People treat you like an idiot if you've got back pain. I mean, all the time, I go to the newspapers and the magazines and I look at various mobility devices. I think there's a good mobility scooter, but my wife forbids me to get anything like that, because I think I could go down to the co-op in my little mobility bike or whatever it is.
Yeah, she won't let you.
She won't let me.
Aww.
So I just stay at home watching Loose Women.
But that is the advice, is that try and not stay home, and you know, lots of people.
The dog, that would be good for your back.
You get this instinct to kind of lay in bed and rest, and that's kind of historical advice. All the studies have shown that people who carry on as normal as much as possible and almost push through pain a little bit, keep moving, keep exercising, have reduced pain, quicker recovery, and slip discs can get better with time, and actually having more physical activity can reduce it happening again.
I do really believe that's a generational thing. I mean, think of my mum, and she always says, if I had a thorn in my foot, I wouldn't walk on it. Something's hurting. My body's telling me not to do it, and my instinct is to rest, and that's my mum's answer to everything. But is there a link, do you think, to chronic pain and weight? As a society, we're getting...
Sorry, what?
Not talking about you personally.
Talking about Adele, are you?
I'm just saying, as we're seeing a society increasing with weight and more obesity, are we also seeing a link with more joint pain and more problems?
Absolutely. You know, carrying excess body weight is carrying excess load on your body. So if you're suffering from something like a slip disc, if you actually think about what a slip disc is, in between the bones in our spine, the vertebrae, we have these kind of shock absorber pads, and they are kind of cushions. If you have more weight on your body, you're compressing them down, and they're more likely to bulge out. So if you, and press on nerves causing pain. So if you lose some weight, it can take some of that pressure off. And it's the same for things like people with arthritis of their knees and hips. Actually losing a bit of weight takes some of the load off your body and can help.
So is the answer, if you've got a slip disc, lose weight, or can there sometimes be a necessary surgery to be done?
You don't keep talking about slip disc. I have 3 of them.
Aww.
That's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon.
You need to have an operation then.
No, I don't need to have an operation. It's too dangerous to have an operation. So as you were saying, Frankie was saying there, the surgeon's idea is that these will heal themselves. The inflammation will reduce. You get injections to take the inflammation away.
The steroid injection.
And then the disc will move back in to where it should be in the first place.
Yeah, so my top tips for people that are suffering with this and have been told to kind of stick it out is keep moving, take painkillers regularly, so not just when the pain's bad, you should take them regularly every 4 to 6 hours to kind of have this basal level of analgesia.
And excuse me, what painkiller do you recommend?
So in general terms, I'd recommend something that has anti-inflammatory properties like ibuprofen, but there are certain cases of people that can't have that, like people with stomach ulcers, or if some people with asthma.
Yes.
So they would be the best painkillers, really, and try and avoid more opioid ones like codeine, which cause you constant.
The difference is the opioid ones relieve pain. The other ones are like eating Skittles, really. They don't
Do you become
really
more
have
immune
anything.
to them if you're popping them every 4 to 6 hours? Less effective?
I think there's an element of kind of tolerance of painkillers, but you can speak to your own doctor about kind of titrating up the pain ladder. And then there's a couple of things we mentioned last week as well about, you know, the complementary therapies, things like physiotherapy that can help encourage exercise. Yeah, osteopathy, acupuncture, they all can play a role. And also many people really suffer mentally from this. So
Swimming.
That goes back to the exercise though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But just getting on top of it.
All very good, all very interesting. The main thing is, you know, you build up resistance to that inflammation if you take your ibuprofen and whatever, and the idea is get your body,
Keep
get
popping
rid of
those
that.
pills then.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Yeah, get out with Maggie.
Constipation is the problem. That's
No, because Dr. Frankie
main
Jackson
thing.
Spence has just put you right and said just avoid the codeine, or what was the phrase he used? Opioid analgesias. Yeah, analgesias.
The fancy term.
Doc, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, we're going to take a break. After that, Martin Daubney and Emma Burnell will be back. See you in a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital.
At absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
And for the last time this morning, flicking through the newspaper so you don't have to, we've got the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, that's Mr Martin Dobney, and political consultant Emma Burnell. And Emma, we're going to start with you. This is front page of the Eye. Cabinet angry at defending Boris Johnson again.
Yeah, Conservative MPs right up to cabinet level are just getting increasingly frustrated at what they're expected to go out and do without any sense of consistency. Boris Johnson's on his third operation in number 10 now. He keeps saying that he'll change and learn and grow. And as I've just tweeted, why don't you ask one of his many, many ex-wives whether that line ever actually holds?
Well, you see, the thing is, there's a lot of people very loyal to Boris Johnson here, and they will hear no criticism or implied criticism against him at all. You only have to look at our inbox, where they think to question Boris Johnson is an act of treason. Basically. But this is not coming from Emma.
No.
It's not coming from me, Isabel, or Martin. This is coming from cabinet ministers.
And this is the thing. The reason one would be loyal to a politician, I assume, is because you believe in what they believe in and you want that to be successful. That means that you have to be able to say, you are getting this wrong. You are failing at the thing I want you to achieve. And cabinet ministers are just getting endlessly embarrassed because they go on the Today programme or whatever at 7 a.m. and say, Boris Johnson absolutely had no knowledge of this. And by 9 o'clock, that's fallen apart.
Well, look, we've had Dominic Raab coming on and he's told me categorically there will be no vote of no confidence. 3 days later, there is one. We've had people coming on who we've never heard of, like Will Quince yesterday morning, trying to say Boris Johnson had no knowledge of Chris Pinch's gropey past. And then, sure enough, 12 hours later, they've reneged.
In the real world, Martin, if you and I were working together now and you were being ridiculous a number of things, I feel I could go and say, Martin, wise up. You know, catch yourself on. Does Johnson, or you just get the sack if you do that, does he have mates, for instance?
Well, what's extraordinary about this is, anybody who works in politics, or indeed any other ordinary industry, will tell you that candidates are always vetted. You do a deep background check. We did that. The Brexit Party do that. Reclaim. You need to know what people's social media history is, let alone allegations of this nature. This should have been spotted. It should have been flagged. It looks like it was spotted and it was flagged. Now, Boris is claiming the allegations weren't substantiated or they hadn't been reported, therefore they don't exist. That's crazy. This is obviously going to come out and bite you on the bum. It has, and it casts serious doubts over his judgment.
About that, though? I mean, if they are unsubstantiated, Should someone be denied a promotion if they are the right, brilliant experience? I mean, it's very easy to destroy someone's career on that basis.
But they weren't unsubstantiated. If you look at the letter
but if the
from the
defence
Lord,
was that it was unsubstantiated,
but the
then
defence
fair
is
enough.
lying because the guy in charge of the Foreign Office has said that it's simply not the case. The letter that he's released publicly today has said that that's not the case. So that. It's not the case that they were unsubstantiated. It's the case that they were found to be a reasonable
So the
case.
former Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, Lord MacDonald, has said in a letter to the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner that Boris Johnson was briefed in person about an investigation into Chris Pincher's conduct as a Foreign Office Minister, and that was breaking news at 7:51 this morning.
Yeah.
OK, let's move on. Daily Telegraph, page 3. We've got a couple of eco-activists really interfering with the national treasure, a constable portrait.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk today about a tale of two protests. We've got the Just Stop Oil Brigade, that's this lot, and then we've got the guys protesting on the motorways about soaring gas prices. And I want to explain why I think they are very different protests. Now, these imbeciles, because that's what they are, Eamonn Lazarus and Hannah Hunt, two students from Brighton, glued themselves to a constable called the Hay Wain in the National Gallery. This is a priceless artefact of great cultural and historical significance.
And they put something over the front of the paint.
They did a kind of apocalyptic interpretation of what that scene would look like in the future when the world's going to burn. It's not. Anyway, that's what they put across. They damaged the painting, which didn't have a sheet of glass over the front. So this is a desecration of a cultural icon. And they're doing that in the name of their cause. And that's the cause, which, by the way, is extremely expensive for British taxpayers. The own government's figures £1,700 per household every year until 2050 to meet net zero targets. Those are part of the reason that people are taking to the motorways, because they cannot afford to fill their cars or heat their homes. This is a protest by middle-class activists who, by the way, have been pointed out, have flown around the world on a world tour to Bali and Australia in the case of Hannah, versus people who cannot afford to get to work. So these people, I think, should be slammed away for criminal damage. They've got no right whatsoever to damage British artefacts.
This boiled down to the debate we had in the last paper review, which is about these new powers that Priti Patel has pushed through Parliament, which enables her to put people in jail if she doesn't like the form of protest that they're taking. Now, you disagree with their cause because you're not into climate change, but you're OK with the cost of living crisis and the fuel crisis because you're worried about people's finances. You can't pick and choose.
No, you can. I think you can, and that is because Britain already has amongst some of the most ambitious net zero targets in the entire world. 2050 net zero carries a huge cost. Now, that's not something that these students will probably have to worry about.
Well, you don't know that. I mean, that's
they will get a grant, or their parents might pay their bill. They hardly seem like they're hard up, do they? Compared to people
we don't
on the
know
motorways.
anything about them.
We do.
I mean, their action was wrong. I think it's counterproductive to their cause, and I think they should be subjected to the same laws as everybody else's. Whether you agree with that law or not is a different question, but you cannot pick and choose. Oh, these guys are nice and I like them, therefore we don't apply the law to them. That's insane. That's not how law works.
Yeah.
It's not about that.
I think he's saying he likes the cause, he likes the justification of why
Absolutely.
they're protesting.
And make that case for your cause. Your cause, my cause, different causes. I will say in the same way that the Cabinet should have the right to say to Boris Johnson, I'll say to these activists, you are not helping my cause that I care very deeply about. Don't do that. But what I am going to say is that if you do that or you break the law in the other way, in a way that I disagree with, I think you should both be treated the same.
But they're not doing the same thing. They're gluing themselves to paintings, they're damaging...
Well, OK, in which case they're causing considerably less disruption to people's lives than the people on the motorways are. They have done something... I mean, I'm not agreeing with it at all. I think the part of the reason why you should fight climate change is because we should protect beauty. And beauty and art is really important to me. I am also a theatre maker. It's something that I care about very, very deeply.
And while we're talking about all of this, there was that glacier in Italy that broke away and killed so many people there as well, which everyone is saying that is part of climate change, that the temperature there should be at 0 degrees and it's at 10 degrees when that glacier is. So, it's no easy answer to it, but there we go. Let's talk school lunches.
Yeah, because of the increasing cost of ingredients of food, the people who provide school lunches who are given pennies to do so, pennies per meal, those pennies are not stretching very far, and they are changing what they can provide. Fewer and fewer people are providing, for example, a roast dinner. Now, we always tend to focus, fairly obviously given the name, on the roasted bit of meat. But actually, one of the things that is really important about this is roast dinners come with 3 veg. And that's a really great way of getting vegetables into kids. Eat your veg before you eat your meat. You know, as we were all told that every Sunday. And I think what's happening is once again a degradation of the things that our children are being given. Particularly, we know that there are lots of children for whom those school meals are the main and sometimes really only meal of the day. The more that that's degraded because of this cost of living crisis, the worse it's getting for those on the very, very sharp end.
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
What do we call it? Stagflation? What do we call it? Shrinkflation.
We're really out of time. We're told to move on, but I do really, Martin, if you can really power through this, because we haven't touched on the story all morning, and I think it is important that we do give it some coverage. And this is the arrest of a Premiership footballer overnight on rape allegations. If you can keep it brief, that would be great.
Sure. So, player arrested at 3 a.m. in the morning. Yesterday, this was after allegations of a sexual assault, rape in the Mediterranean in June, a month ago. This is a big player. An international player who is heading for the World Cup in Qatar, one of the top players in his Premier League team. Lots of rumours flying around about that team, which of course we won't say on this show. But this is a serious story about privilege, about wealth, relation. Not proven guilty yet, of course. This is just an allegation. But we must look to Premier League stars as setting an example for young people, and this obviously doesn't do that.
Perfect.
Thank you both very much indeed, Martin and Emma, for today's newspaper roundup. News roundup looks like this.
A man's been arrested following a mass shooting at a 4th of July celebration parade in Chicago. 6 people were shot dead after a gunman opened fire with a high-powered rifle from a rooftop.
The NHS will trial the use of drones to send chemotherapy drugs. It's hoped they'll speed up deliveries of vital medicines. The scheme will pave the way for same-day delivery of medical supplies from anywhere in the country.
And the Duchess of Cornwall has commissioned the Duchess of Cambridge, her daughter-in-law, to take her picture for the cover of Country Life magazine. Kate, who is, of course, a keen amateur photographer, took the photographs to celebrate Camilla's 75th birthday.
Autism affects 1 in 100 children, 2 in 100 adults, but new research shows that many women aren't being diagnosed until much later in their lives.
Well, let's speak to one such woman, Kirsty Nicole Hadley. She was diagnosed with autism with ADHD at the age of 48 and is here to share her story with us. A very good morning to you.
Thank you
so that is a late diagnosis. How early on do you think, looking back, you were aware that you had some of the symptoms?
Oh my God, I mean now, because I'm raising my son in a neurodivergent parenting way, I can see all of the traits that he has now, and he's amazing. He's so brilliant, and you know, but being neurodivergent does come with a lot of challenges.
So I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about?
With regards to
neurodivergent.
Everybody has one or the other type of brain. So there are 2 types of brain. There is neurotypical and neurodivergent. So a neurotypical brain is just the sort of what we have always based society on, based the education system on, based, you know, the way that we move through life has been based on neurotypical ways. But now we know that there is another type of brain, and that is a neurodivergent brain. So everybody has one or the other, and it's really important for everyone to know which brain they have, because that then informs how you learn, how you work.
Right. So you're an individual as well as a mum. You're a woman in your own right, and at 48 years of age, I don't know how long ago that was, they say to you, you've got this condition.
Yeah.
How have you been able to change your life or live with that condition in the intervening time? How many years have passed?
So just one. So I was only diagnosed last year, and my diagnosis was ADHD with autistic traits and dyscalculia. So I've been moving through life without knowing that I had these, I don't know, conditions, for want of a better word, but, you know, it's just a different way of being.
You know, doesn't it become obvious, once the veil is lifted from your eyes, how many other people actually suffer or have the same things?
Oh, well, I was just, as soon as I got my diagnosis, it was like everything made sense. And then it was also, the way that I had moved through life, the way that I process information, mistakes that I've made, patterns I couldn't change.
So how had you moved through life that was neurodivergent?
So, like a million miles an hour, constantly chopping and changing from one thing to the next, there's a lot of demand avoidance. So if I am going to do something, it has to be my idea. So as soon as someone tells me to do something, my brain starts to say, I'm not doing that.
Sounds like my husband.
As I said, a lot of people have this.
And I think that one of the main points is that, particularly with autism, there are still so many stereotypes out there. And what I have learned through watching my son blossom into this amazing young man and also identifying my own autistic traits is that those stereotypes are really outdated.
But isn't he lucky to have you? I mean, how privileged. You just look back and think you're there to guide and protect him from here on in the way nobody guided and protected you.
Well, I think that I'm lucky to have him.
He is.
Right.
Aww.
Yeah, there he is. Cheeky monkey.
What's his name?
He's called Sonny J.
Sonny J. Okay.
Yeah, he asked me to mention him, actually. So.
Well, there you are.
Hi, Sonny.
Good
Love you.
Did you spot it then before your own diagnosis, or do you think your diagnosis caused you to say, hang on a minute, I think this could be in the family?
No, so I think it was the other way around. So as I was raising Sonny, because he's an only child, it's my first only experience of raising a child, and I probably would have picked it up earlier if I was neurotypical, maybe, because for me, looking at Sonny, I don't think there's anything different because he's just the same as me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, you see, the whole thing is, there's so many people just the same as you.
Yeah.
And I bet you we're not geared up to dealing with it, and there's got to be a lot of things change. Is this the start of a recognition of the veil being lifted and for life being easier for people who've got autism or ADHD?
Well, as soon as I was invited to come on this show, I was like, this is amazing, you know, because all of us in the neurodivergent community, and particularly parents of young children that are waiting to be diagnosed, we have been screaming from the rooftops because families are in crisis behind closed doors. There are children that can't go to school 5 days a week. Yeah. There are children that are waiting 4 years to reach a diagnosis, and that was our story as well. There are children that are being diagnosed with PTSD because the educational setting is geared up for neurotypical humans and not yet neurodivergent. So whenever we have any changes or reasonable adjustments, they can be too late often because you're already in crisis mode.
But are you saying this can be easily solved?
Yeah. I honestly believe that the solutions are so simple, and the people that hold the solutions are the neurodivergent humans.
Gotcha.
But what's happening is that we're not being let in. You know, most decisions that are made on behalf of and that will affect neurodivergent humans are made by neurotypical society.
Yes.
And the diagnostic process, you know, that the whole diagnosis is... I mean, I think it's very old-fashioned, the diagnostic process now, and it doesn't take into account the way that girls mask, i.e. hide their autistic traits. It's heavily skewed towards the white male case study.
Yeah.
And even, you know, when you are a white male, so if we're talking about my son, it was hard for us to get a diagnosis for him because they became very stuck on autistic people mustn't be able to make eye contact, autistic people mustn't be able to make friends, and autistic people mustn't be able to show empathy.
False.
And it's a huge... the spectrum is so vast.
Yeah.
That might be true for some people, but for a lot of kids...
The subject is so vast as well, Kirsty, and thank you for highlighting it to us. And maybe you'll come back again in the future and we'll talk more about this and tap into, as you say, the whole community, the whole people who know exactly what you're talking about here. But thank you very much indeed. Very good hearing you.
so much.
And good luck on your future path. And,
Yeah,
and,
good luck with your
and
son
Sonny
as
as
well.
well.
Thank
you.
We're going to take a break. Back in just a minute.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A fine day to come for many, but there will be a few showers around. There will be a lot of cloud around, and there will be further rain in the north later, more especially overnight and into tomorrow. At the moment, high pressure's trying to build in from the west. It will have more success later in the week, but for the time being, weather fronts are still toppling around the top of that high to bring some weather into northern parts of the country. That's what we saw yesterday, and we'll see further showers here and there, mainly northwest England, North Wales, Northern Ireland and parts of northern Scotland through the day. But actually some decent sunny spells coming through for Scotland, for northern England. I think for Northern Ireland, for parts of Wales and the south, a lot of cloud remains, and as a result, temperatures not far from average, perhaps a little below in some spots, 22 Celsius for London, 19 for Glasgow, 18 for Belfast, for example. But it's for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland where the cloud thickens later, and by the evening, spells of rain move in. Those outbreaks of rain crossing Scotland into Northern England, North Wales, North Midlands and Northern Ireland overnight. Mostly it's on and off, but for Western Scotland it's persistent and it will build up over the hills. But with the cloud arriving from the northwest overnight and with milder air arriving as well, well, it's not going to be as cool as we start off tomorrow. Temperatures in the mid-teens in many spots. And in the south, well, the rain doesn't reach here. In fact, it's expected to stay dry through the week across southern parts of England and Wales. Some sunshine coming through as well, a sunnier day compared to today, whilst it is also warmer, 22 to 24 Celsius. Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, though, cloud and outbreaks of rain, again most persistent over the hills of western Scotland, where it will be cool and blustery. Thursday and Friday more widely settled, I think, and warming up, particularly in the south, with highs of 27 by Friday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Priti Patel urges police to arrest fuel protesters as they bring motorways to a standstill.
We're not at a standstill. We're moving right through to 9:30 this morning, Tuesday the 5th of July. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News. here on television and on Radio Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading our news this morning. And the Home Secretary has urged the police to arrest and charge fuel campaigners that block the motorway amid warnings that the protests could continue through the summer.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is facing a party revolt over Brexit after he vowed in a speech not to take Britain back into the single market. It comes as he prepares to learn if he will be fined over Beergate.
Police in Chicago have arrested a 22-year-old man in connection with a mass shooting that took place during a 4th of July parade. The incident killed 6 and injured 30 others, including at least 1 child.
OK, you know what to do, how to get in touch. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews. We start with politics in this half hour, and the former Conservative MP Neil Parish made headlines when he was forced to resign. He was the one who was caught watching pornography in the House of Commons.
Well, with culture in Westminster dominating the news agenda yet again after the Tory Deputy Whip, Chris Pincher, was accused of inappropriate behaviour, our political editor Darren McCaffrey has sat down with Neil Parish and asked him if he regretted resigning as an MP.
You know, retrospect, hindsight, maybe do you regret resigning in the end? That actually, as you say, given what's happened, it's entirely possible, you know, you would have got through it in some ways.
Yes, but you see, when my family, and I not only talked to my wife, I talked to my son and daughter, and they both said, I think, Daddy, you've got to go. So, you know, you do the right thing. You don't always want to do the right thing. So I'm not trying to make myself into a hero, because I'm not. And I'm a man who's made a big mistake. It was just wrong. So in the end, go. But you see, what I don't want to do and what I don't intend to do is disappear from the face of the earth, because I still have a lot in me, a lot of expertise, a lot of good things I can do, both with charity and with the farming sector, like I said, on food, animal welfare, fair share, you know, all people that need food. So lots of stuff out there. And so, you know, I'm a great believer in using one's talents. And even at this stage where I've blown my talents and my career to smithereens quite spectacularly, I have no intentions of going away and never being heard of again. And I've got to do some good, and there's good in me. And I am actually quite a good person, despite all this. If you ask I used to love talking to the doorkeepers. I like all the people in the restaurants. I always had banter with everybody. I used to get in the morning when I first got there 12 years ago and talk to everybody, because I'm a country boy. I say good morning. I open doors for people. I'm traditional, and they all looked at me as I was mad. But after 12 years, they've all talked to me. And one thing I do want to clear up is, I think one of my leading Conservative select committee chairs said that I was very wrong. I was patronising because I called women ladies. I was brought up in a farming family where it was disrespectful to call a woman. You called them a lady. So when I actually call somebody a lady, I may be old-fashioned, but I am not being disrespectful. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on out there where, you know, your colleagues who you know, perhaps I think ought to know better, should not have had that particular go at me.
It hurts a lot still.
Well, it does, but on the other hand, I appreciate this interview, because, you see, do you leave the hurt inside to burn you away, or do you bring it out? And do you get not your side of the story, but just the human side of it, and the fact that, you know, I was absolutely stupid and offensive, but I didn't mean to be, and I was crazy at that moment in time. So, but does that mean that you are entirely finished? And I hope it's not, because I've still got a lot of good in me to do.
You can catch the full interview, Darren McCaffrey there with Neil Parish at 3 o'clock this afternoon on GB News. That would be half an hour long.
Yeah, look, he seems like a nice chap and he seems remorseful, but it doesn't excuse what he did, and it still does make me feel a little bit sick. So it's just a question of, you know, can you move on from that? And look, you know, maybe he'll try and make a return to public life. Should his whole career be lost because of the mistake he made? You know, it's up for debate, but you know, clearly he's a nice person, and we all make mistakes. But
OK, your views are very welcome at GB News. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise. And the Home Secretary has called on police to use tougher powers, such as imprisonment, to stop the fuel protesters causing havoc on motorways.
several arrests were made yesterday as campaigners called for a cut in fuel duty targeting the M4 and stretches of the M5 during the morning rush hour. Well, the Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told us there has to be a balance of giving people the right to protest, but not to close down roads.
So whilst it's right that people should have the opportunity to be able to express their views, as I say, we also need to bear in mind that on those roads there will be ambulances, there will be lorries taking food to shops and so forth. You know, we need to make sure the arteries of our country do remain in a healthy place.
A man has been arrested following a mass shooting at yesterday's 4th of July celebration parade in Chicago. 6 people were shot dead after a gunman opened fire with a high-powered rifle from a rooftop.
And the Duchess of Cornwall has commissioned the Duchess of Cambridge to take her picture for the cover of Country Life magazine. Kate, who is a keen amateur photographer, has taken the photographs to celebrate Camilla's 75th birthday later this month. Now, researchers have warned that humans could become extinct if sperm count in men continues to fall at the current rate.
I know this is of particular concern to you because earlier we spoke to IVF pioneer Lord Robert Winston. Isabel asked him whether we should be worried about low sperm.
I think we shouldn't be too worried about scarce stories about fertility, frankly, at all. One of the problems is that the humans are so fertile that we actually overpopulate the world anyway. So I'm not convinced that a bit of subfertility, if it exists, would be a problem. But actually, I do not think we will die out because males are not being capable of impregnating their females. I think the evidence for that is really very poor.
I was just wanting to quote the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, who say that the average sperm count has more than halved among Western men in the past 40 years. I mean, do you accept that there has been a decline in recent decades? And if there has, is there anything that men should be doing to avoid that?
Well, I'm very familiar with the researchers at the Hebrew University who I admire, and I respect the excellent research they do there. But actually, the way we measure sperm counts now is very, very different from what it was 40 years ago. And so much of the problem, I think, is new ways of measurement and more accurate measurement. So I think that's one of the issues. I think also when you look at different fertility clinics, which we did, for example, at my own in London when I was working there, was that that actually, when we rechecked these figures, we never saw such a marked decline. And I think it very much depends on how they're observed. However, I do agree there may be some reduction in fertility, but it doesn't seem to have prevented people getting pregnant.
And what about oestrogen in the water? We're talking about water quality in London. Stories about water all over the papers today.
Yeah.
And it's something, again, perhaps there's a myth, but I just, obviously, you know, your expertise always very welcome on these issues. Should people be worried about the sort of oestrogen that's leaked into the water systems from female contraceptives?
You mean through urine, of course?
Yeah.
Because that's how these hormones would be excreted. Well, I have to tell you the truth. I've never actually tested lavatory water, and I don't know anybody who has. But it is true that certainly in many rivers and some other watercourses, we have seen estrogens which are probably phytoestrogens, which are or estrogens which are not necessarily human estrogens, which may come from, for example, plants, and also various waste which is tipped into water supplies. That probably is not a good thing, but then there are hundreds of different molecules which unfortunately are polluting our waters. We certainly should have cleaner water than we have. But whether, in fact, this really makes a difference to humans, it may do to fish, I think is unclear.
I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot, but I'm interested in your views, because it's such a hot topic at the moment, about what's been happening in the States with Roe versus Wade. We did an interview this week on this programme with a pro-lifer who was very much of the view that life begins at conception. And of course, there are implications on that view in the IVF world. And of course, if that is the view, then the destruction of fertilised embryos becomes highly controversial as well. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I think it's a terrible step back for democracy. I think, unfortunately, women should have absolutely the right to choose. I don't think parliamentarians or anybody else should have nearly as much power as they seem to. And for the Supreme Court, for example, as happened in the United States, to make this ruling with 6 elderly men, I think is really quite unreasonable. In my view, we should be much more aware that these things will continue to have these sorts of advances, have made a massive difference to populations and to women. And this cancellation of Roe versus Wade in some states is another negative step back for the United States, I'm afraid. It won't happen here, I'm quite certain of that, but we need to make sure that people understand there's no such thing as life beginning at conception. Sperm are alive, egg are alive, and conception is only a moment of about 24 hours. And so, really, there is no one point in time when you can say a human is made. That is a general situation in all mammals, as in fact fertilization develops. Moreover, nature actually destroys most fertilized eggs anyway through natural processes. Not many naturally normal fertilized eggs actually survive and become babies. That's just one of the processes of the imperfect nature of human conception.
Professor Robert Winston. With that, we'll take a break, and then we're tasting water. We're going to be telling you about the wonders of water, plain old H2O.
And we've got a water sommelier to give us some advice on the best water for us to taste. That's after your forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A fine day to come for many, but there will be a few showers around. There will be a lot of cloud around, and there will be further rain in the north later, more especially overnight and into tomorrow. At the moment, high pressure's trying to build in from the west. It will have more success later in the week, but for the time being, weather fronts are still toppling around the top of that high to bring some weather into northern parts of the country. That's what we saw yesterday, and we'll see further showers here and there, mainly northwest England, North Wales, Northern Ireland and parts of northern Scotland through the day. But actually some decent sunny spells coming through for Scotland, for northern England. I think for Northern Ireland, for parts of Wales and the south, a lot of cloud remains, and as a result, temperatures not far from average, perhaps a little below in some spots. 22 Celsius for London, 19 for Glasgow, 18 for Belfast, for example. But it's for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland where the cloud thickens later, and by the evening, spells of rain move in. Those outbreaks of rain crossing Scotland into northern England, North Wales, North Midlands and Northern Ireland overnight. Mostly it's on and off, but for Western Scotland it's persistent and it will build up over the hills. But with the cloud arriving from the northwest overnight and with milder air arriving as well, well, it's not going to be as cool as we start off tomorrow. Temperatures in the mid-teens in many spots. And in the south, well, the rain doesn't reach here. In fact, it's expected to stay dry through the week across southern parts of England and Wales. Some sunshine coming through as well, a sunnier day compared to today, whilst it is also warmer, 22 to 24 Celsius. Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England though, cloud and outbreaks of rain, again most persistent over the hills of western Scotland, where it will be cool and blustery. Thursday and Friday more widely settled, I think, and warming up, particularly in the south, with highs of 27 by Friday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Now, we're going to finish the programme today on a very interesting subject because we were reading this week about millions of people, absolutely millions of people here in London and the southeast of England. Apparently there's some sort of scare going around that water's going to be rationed and they run the risk of running out of drinking water over the next 10 years or so.
Yeah, that's according to some campaigners. The UK government is recommending that 6 to 8 glasses of water a day are consumed. So we're asking this morning, what is the best way to drink the right amount of water? And we're joined now by certified water sommelier Eamonn Patel.
Just run that past me again.
What's that?
Water sommelier.
Yeah,
really.
A water taste expert.
Like as if he can tell the difference between water. You see, a lot of people, this is Eamonn Patel, a lot of people, Eamonn, will think all water tastes the same, but you're going to take us through several varieties.
That's right. Eamonn Patel, water consultant for 20 years, water sommelier. I'm here to hydrate your imagination with water as unique as you. So first of all, we're going to start off with a very special water, tap water.
Okay.
We are very lucky.
GB News tap water?
No, this is from a water dispenser promoted by the Mayor of London and Thames Water from Fulham Broadway.
And
so
how should we consume water to get the best taste? Is it the same as wine with a swirl?
Yes, give water value from a beautiful stemware. Why not?
Okay.
We give it to wine, so... So you get a calcium level, you get a slight hint of chlorine there.
Yeah,
it's very heavy on the palate.
Yeah, it definitely has an antiseptic sort of... can you not taste the chemicals in it? Very obvious to me.
Without this, we're going to be going back to the Victorian days of cholera epidemics without the additional chlorine. But there are ways to fix this. The second water that I would like to introduce...
That wouldn't really make me lick my lips and say I fancy a glass of that.
That is for hydration.
If it was cold, it might be...
Yes, temperature plays a huge role. The next water would be Aquapact, and I encourage the government to look at sustainable packaged waters, remove the one-use plastic bottled waters from the supermarket shelves, and water on the go should be more of a carton-based.
Now, does that disintegrate, that carton?
It can be recyclable a lot easier than plastic, and I'm starting a campaign next week to urge the government by 2024 to drop single-use plastic bottled water.
Fantastic campaign.
Yes, and I think it's very important for the children to have more academic learning about the source of water and where it's from to create a drinking water lifestyle.
Well, what?
Taste it on the other side. I mean, I'm really sorry. I've just got a poisoned palate. I can't tell.
You might be slightly dehydrated,
I'm
but
always dehydrated.
It takes a bit of time to taste water.
I think that tastes smooth. Is that a fair
wow,
comment?
what a beautiful vocabulary you've just used.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's there.
It was sort of,
We've just never been taught or educated for generations to describe the taste of water, and they all taste different. So
I quite like carbonated water. I'm a Philistine with that.
Yeah.
Carbonated water is brilliant. It brings bubbles of joy. The carbonation levels pair brilliant with foods or wines.
But does it still hydrate you?
It does indeed, and stimulates the digestive system as well. So I've got a very special water from Slovenia.
Oh, thank you. Now,
Try this.
just because I've watched a documentary on water with Zac Efron, I'm suspicious that this is going to have a high mineral content.
You're right. It's one of the world's richest waters. It's medically certified as well.
Now that tastes like, that almost tastes like liver salts.
Yes, for me, I would describe it as a sherbety, sweet sherbety taste at the end.
It tastes fizzy.
Like
and Mother Nature put the bubbles.
soda almost, yeah.
Yes, very good for you. High in magnesium, calcium.
That.
This is a great water for maybe hungover, if you want to perk yourself up, health and well-being.
Right, what's the name of that one?
Donat MG from Slovenia.
£5 a pop, though, but, you know, it's quite nice.
And then the next water we've got here is a very beautiful water. It's called Cloud Juice from King Island, Tasmania. So it's virgin rainwater, straight from the clouds.
Carbon footprint, though.
Carbon footprint. In this world, there is a carbon footprint on everything. This is an experience water. You have tap water for hydration, and then you have waters for celebration, to enjoy. And what's amazing about this water is Bob Marley said, you know, some people feel the rain, taste the rain, others just get wet. So it's one of these waters that creates a nice experience with loved ones or on a dinner table. It's not everyday hydration.
Isn't it wonderful? I love it.
Yeah,
It's enthusiasm. So what's this one
Can
called?
we become water
Cloud
snobs
juice.
then? Are we?
Not water snobs, water ambassadors.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you.
sharing the vocabulary of how to describe water.
See, I can tell when I go home, the water in Belfast tastes different than the water in London, for instance.
Absolutely.
Regionally, will water taste different?
It does indeed, because it all depends on the minerals within the soils, the calciums, the magnesiums, and these are Mother Nature's ingredients that provide the mouthfeel and taste.
See, I can tell why you wanted the order to be different. You wanted the Bulgarian one last because actually coming afterwards, this tastes quite bland.
That's
but
right.
again, I think it tastes like water, like you know.
Yeah, so you start from a low mineral to a high mineral. And I think it's very important that just recently, at least 80% of our traditional British Victorian water fountains across the UK are not being used. They're either cemented in, cigarette butts, or the irony of plastic bottles just being left in them.
Yeah.
And I encourage government, councils to
Get them back.
And the beauty of these water fountains for public, and we've got great history here in the UK of providing this.
I'm only doing this because we're almost out of time. The programme's going to finish. So I've just opened this stunning box. It says water is gold.
It's a very special
water.
water.
And I don't know if you can see that. If I sit over here, can you see that? Where's camera 6? Straight in front of us. And I'll bring a bottle. Oh, you can't because of my yellow dress. See the golden specks. But let me pour some.
Will the gold not poison us? What use is the gold
I'm fine
in
with
it?
drinking.
The natural gold has antiseptic properties. It's been used for centuries. This water from Slovenia comes from a very special spring. And recently, they found a seahorse, a 12.5 million fossil seahorse at the actual spring. And it's to create an experience and the discussion and the value of water.
So, Millen, last words to you in 10 seconds or so. What should people be taking away? What should they be thinking about their water from here on in?
Respect tap water for your daily hydration. Make sure your kids are educated in regards to describing the taste of water. Make sure the kids have plenty of water on the way to school, and also the schools to encourage drinking water and creating a vocabulary and including more water technology.
What would a bottle of this set you back out of interest?
It's a talking point, £150. But that should create what is the value of water.
150 quid.
Dear,
Have you ever drunk gold before?
Yeah.
Have you?
Only by
course you
mistake.
have.
Only by mistake.
Okay.
That's Millen Patel. Millen is a water sommelier. We must say goodbye to you because we must go and have a wee. But we will be back tomorrow from 6 a.m. Cheers.
This is good stuff. Thanks, Millen.
Thank you.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A fine day to come for many, but there will be a few showers around. There will be a lot of cloud around, and there will be further rain in the north later, more especially overnight and into tomorrow. At the moment, high pressure's trying to build in from the west. It will have more success later in the week, but for the time being, weather fronts are still toppling around the top of that high to bring some weather into northern parts of the country. That's what we saw yesterday, and we'll see further showers here and there, mainly northwest England, North Wales, Northern Ireland and parts of northern Scotland through the day. But actually some decent sunny spells coming through for Scotland, for Northern England. I think for Northern Ireland, for parts of Wales and the south, a lot of cloud remains, and as a result, temperatures not far from average, perhaps a little below in some spots, 22 Celsius for London, 19 for Glasgow, 18 for Belfast, for example. But it's for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland where the cloud thickens later, and by the evening, spells of rain move in. Those outbreaks of rain crossing Scotland into Northern England, North Wales, North Midlands and Northern Ireland overnight. Mostly it's on and off, but for Western Scotland it's persistent and it will build up over the hills. But with the cloud arriving from the northwest overnight and with milder air arriving as well, well, it's not going to be as cool as we start off tomorrow. Temperatures in the mid-teens in many spots. And in the south, well, the rain doesn't reach here. In fact, it's expected to stay dry through the week across southern parts of England and Wales. Sunshine coming through as well, a sunnier day compared to today, whilst it is also warmer, 22 to 24 Celsius. Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England though, cloud and outbreaks of rain, again most persistent over the hills of western Scotland where it will be cool and blustery. Thursday and Friday more widely settled, I think, and warming up, particularly in the south with highs of 27 by Friday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's